we go.
What is up, party people? I always wanted to say this. So, hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I am Vlad. This is season 15, episode 44, and we are live with Chris DeRose alongside Jay Berg and Wayne Vaughn. Is that the way you pronounce it?
Yes, sir.
So basically, this is a reunion of Bitcoin Uncensored. Wayne has been on the show, if I'm not mistaken, 3 times?
6 or 7.
6 or 7 times. Wow.
Yeah.
So you are just, I think you mentioned that only Paul Storrs has one more appearance than you.
I'm pretty sure. It's not really a contest, but, there was a few more episodes. I think he got in after the blow up between Chris and Josh.
And yeah, we also have Jay Berg, who said he has been on the show more than a couple of times.
Yeah, 3. I've been on 3 times. You know, it's probably hard to find, and that's probably best. But it was definitely influential moments back in the early days. It was awesome.
And you also mentioned that you were one of the first people to get on the show.
I was there right before McAfee that day when he showed up. I got kicked out. Like we got what's his name in here? So
That was on one conference, not the first on the show, but he was probably the first at the conference.
So, Chris, what have you been up to? I guess, no, wait, let's start with who are you? Because there are so many people who have no idea about Bitcoin Uncensored and will be listening to this wondering, who's this guy? Why is he so important that other people join just to have this conversation with him?
Oh, well, for the people who haven't heard of me before, I ran a podcast with a co-host, Bitcoin Uncensored, that was fairly influential in its day. I wrote a good amount for a few of the periodicals in the space, including American Banker and Bitcoin Magazine, a few others. And in general, I was just sort of a provocateur and miscreant that had a lot of fun in the space and aired the fun for others to watch. I guess that's a good introduction.
Just so you know, I was speaking with Jay Berg a few days ago, and we came up with the idea of bringing Perry Ann Boring on this live stream.
Oh, man. That lady. Who the hell? I forget even. There's a lot of these people I haven't even thought of in years.
She said she would do it
one of them.
She said she would do it live.
What is she up to? Is she like in the space at all? Is she moved on to something?
She's a badass in Congress or something.
Okay.
She's very active in DC. She still has the it's not the Blockchain Association. What's the name of her organization? Blockchain Association is Kristen's. I can't remember, but she still runs a pretty influential, basically, lobbying group.
Okay.
She's participating in the go up technology in a meaningful way. She found her voice, and she's doing good in the world.
Okay, good. I'm writing for the best for all the characters.
Digital Chamber. Digital Chamber
of Commerce. That's what it was. That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, glad blockchain's still doing well. I've got a lot of theories on blockchain. I don't even know, for the new audience, I don't even know that they really can understand blockchain in the way that we did on the show. Maybe they can understand it in like the sense of like, I don't know, AI. Like, I've been thinking a lot about AI. It's going to become the next blockchain if it hasn't already. I'm debating whether or not to just adjust my vocabulary, remove the word good and just replace it with the word AI. You know, like, I don't know, that was an AI TV show I just watched, or that was maybe an AI grade on your report card, young man. I was glad to see that. Just to kind of like speed the process along where we'll inevitably end up. Seems like that maybe is a good way to understand blockchain for anybody who didn't experience it as it happened.
There's Vake in the chat.
I don't know what we want to talk about today.
There's Vake in the chat, and he says, Vake, V-A-K-E.
Oh, hey, Vake.
He says, it's good to see you alive, whatever that means.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I've been reclusive. I've been reclusive to like everybody. Like, I've just been reclusive. And I don't know why. I go through phases in my life where I think about this sometimes. There are phases, I think, when like society is configured in such a way that I want to participate. And then there are times when it's not. And so I think at the moment, it's one of those latter phases. Kind of done that off and on in my life. Now that I'm older and I have a little more freedom, I'm embracing that ability. It's nice. It's nice both to be interactive in society, and it's nice to not be interactive in society, depending on what society you've been given. So,
Well, you're interacting now, so maybe this is the beginning of a new cycle.
this was, yeah, Vlad, you caught me at a weak moment. I've actually had a number of interview requests, almost all of which I've denied for no reason, like nice people and all that. I just didn't really want to be in the public space. And then you called me like at the right time. Like if you had emailed me like an hour later, I probably would have said no. I don't know why. I've just gotten my Colombian citizenship. I think when you emailed me, like I now have a Colombian birth certificate, and I don't have my driver's license yet, which is what I'm kind of in town waiting for. Mostly I hang out in Colombia. I really like it there a lot. It's a wonderful place. It's easy. People are very pleasant. And in general, they don't speak English there. So that's been like really nice. I'm trying to kind of remove English from my life, which is not going well, but I'm making progress.
You told me in our email exchange that you gave away your podcasting gears to some Yu-Gi-Oh streamers or something from Colombia.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a
Yes.
fun thing to say, and coming from you, it makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I really like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, I play quite a bit, and over there they have like quite a few champions in this one shop in Medellin, and so I spend time with them, and they have their own podcasting ambitions, and so I was like, I got a whole closet full of equipment, and so I shipped it on over and gave it away to the Colombian Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a ridiculous game, and I'm almost embarrassed that I play it, but it captured me, and so I do.
But is it not like Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, it's the same. It's like Japanese Magic the Gathering. And Magic the Gathering is something I haven't wanted to get into. A lot of my friends play it. I've played Arena a few times. I seem to just like Yu-Gi-Oh! More. I started to write like a program to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For me, and then I was like, why am I doing this? And so I stopped. But I've gotten pretty into it. I don't know why. I still have a way to spend time socially. Practicing my Spanish.
Sounds
Good
like
for that.
something you would do.
Yeah.
So what's your current opinion on Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's okay. So I have a lot of complex opinions about Bitcoin, and like, it's not about like good or bad. Like, I try to like remove a lot of that as much as I can from my understanding of the world. I've read a lot of philosophy. I read a lot generally. That's like kind of what I do. I see it in like semiotic terms. We have these signs that glow red hot online. Bitcoin was one and or is one of them. I do kind of see it as a golden cow in terms of its like anthropological significance. So like, it's kind of hard to unsee once you see it. But if you put a bunch of like cavemen on the internet, they're going to start doing the kinds of stuff that humans do in a sort of like virtualized representation. And one of those things is to worship golden cows, seemingly. And so I think that's definitely what I did in many ways, although I didn't try to start out that way. And I think that's what people do now, is that they sort of abstract this in that sort of mode of thinking, and then they behave accordingly. And that's kind of how I see Bitcoin. And it's not like a bad thing, just very detached from where we started, I think.
Yeah.
So where did you start? Or what was the vision that you had on Bitcoin at the time?
Well,
Uh-huh.
I've always really liked the sort of Blade Runner movie underground kind of force where there's the sort of mainstream above board society, and then there's the other side of things where there's like maybe other, if not a resistance movement, some sort of like shadow economy. And like, that was a big part of it. I liked that this existed in that space. I also like that there wasn't an institution. This is another thing I deal with. In general, the institutions are like just not acceptable to me. And so like, this wasn't an institutional force, which was fantastic. I look at how I've lived my life in general, and though I've obviously interacted with institutions extensively, I rarely enjoyed the process. And I try to do things that aren't institutional in nature. So like Linux would be like a really easy example of that. And Bitcoin was part of that space. So you had a sort of like power to the people kind of thing going there in the shadows, in this sort of alternate economy. And then I'm not going to deny, like the want to be wealthy was huge. And so like there was that potential as well. So those are probably the main forces there. I very much liked the idea of decentralization. I still like the idea of decentralization, though I don't think Bitcoin's going to deliver any of that, unfortunately. But that was a big part of it as well. If I had to guess, a lot of us still like decentralization. A lot of us probably are apprehensive about institutional models. If I had to guess, I don't know. I'm a little out of touch with the community. But these are themes that spoke to me. And then the Darknet, like, let it be clear, like when Silk Road came around, that was when I was like, oh, I get it. Blockchain makes sense,
I guess this was before the era of blockchain analysis.
Yeah. Well, not only, it was before the era of blockchain even. Like Bitcoin was like a standalone thing at the time. Like there was this idea of blockchain that was part of it, but it wasn't like the part that was good. It was just sort of technologically intriguing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't remember the Bitcoin 2.0 era, which was like right around when Counterparty was getting started and everything else. There were all these other coins, and they were invented for a variety of reasons. Some of them were technical experimentation. Many of them were just because that GPU mining became inefficient on Bitcoin after ASICs existed. So people had all this infrastructure. So they did things like, take Bitcoin and modify it so you can use script, which can run on, is the mining algorithm that can run on GPUs. And then there was a whole sort of Cambrian explosion around that time. So there was a lot more experimentation, a lot more of a feeling like we were doing something new and pioneering versus any sort of like organized effort, or sort of the political zeitgeist nowadays is that, if you're advocating for Bitcoin, it's part of your customer acquisition strategy for your company, or you have a big bag and you need the banks to change how they treat you, or you want politics to be different. So yeah, it was a kinder and simpler time.
Back then, you had to actually be a coder in order to launch one of these things. You didn't just have point and click smart contracts. So it was much more, scientific, ground, on the ground developers. It was the best time. I think we could all admit it. 2010 to maybe 16 or something. That was peak Bitcoin, especially before the GPU mining. You actually had distributed consensus, decentralized, censorship existed. And then
I mean, Chris can speak to this too, probably better than I can, but I miss that we were all a bunch of bumbling idiots, that we were all just trying to find our way forward and see if we could make this thing work, as opposed to being culture warriors or, trying to take down the man or something like that. It was like, hey, this is really interesting. And many of us back then knew that digital currencies of a kind had been tried for many, many years across many iterations. It's like, is this this one we think it can work? How can we take this fledgling thing and help it survive and turn into something noteworthy? And how can we make sure it doesn't die? So I miss those days. It was good times.
Yeah, I agree with that. The culture war really is not the best thing. And, it swept us all into, I think, at some level, and it's not for the better.
Yeah, and the reason why I invited you, Chris, for this episode is basically that I got canceled about 3 months ago for interviewing Roger Ver, of all people. And I do... Paul Sorts is back. I do a new interview every week, and basically that one blew up. It had like 60,000 views after 2 weeks, and I was like, wow.
Good for you.
But at the same time, people hated me for it. And they said I brought back into relevance this guy who's hated and is the Judas, and he's a villain. And I didn't ask him all of the questions that people expected me to ask him. And I told him, I'm not a tribunal. I'm not a court of law or whatever. If you want to sue the guy for some reason, just go ahead and do it. If you think he's guilty, go ahead. But don't assign that role onto me, because honestly, I just wanted to have a conversation with him tell him where I think he was wrong and where I think he was right. And just giving him credit for stuff. He was right about the Lightning Network in some ways. That's blasphemous. So right now I'm not invited to some conferences.
You never actually got canceled, right? Then so like we shouldn't give them.
Like he lost conference invites.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Oh, you're too
Paul.
loud, Paul. Can you do anything about it?
Do what? Too loud? Oh,
No, your video.
Oh, hang on. Let me see. I stepped into a quiet area.
Yeah, audio's pretty good.
I don't know how good the connection is here.
Just don't talk so
Vlad,
loud.
I'm sorry to hear about your frustrations, but like, I don't know. Like, it sounds like you're doing okay. Like the controversies would like appear to be antithetical to your goals, but they probably aren't. Like you're probably making waves, and that's just a sign that you're impactful. And then what like when you start this thing, like you've got to kind of cater to the crowd, and then over time, like you're gonna make the crowd, and so you might be at like that change in the podcast. I don't know. People listen for all kinds of reasons, but generally people listen because they want to hear what they want to hear, and those people didn't hear what they want to hear. That's
Yeah,
all.
exactly. I think
Wrong
right
or
now
untrue.
there's this movement of Bitcoin podcasts where if you say that we're very early and we're very smart and we're gonna be rich and we're the new financial elites or whatever, even if you bought in 2024, that's how you get the views. And then the peak of your career is going to be inviting Adam back and then Michael Saylor, and that's it. That's when you know that you've made it and you have been validated by the community, and it means that you're successful. It means that you're someone. You're gonna be invited at conferences. You're gonna be flown around the world to say stuff. You should never step out of line. And it was funny to me when I got quote unquote canceled and people were coming at me saying, "Oh, you did that and it's horrible." And I was telling them, you also have a podcast. So you're just one interview away from being in a much worse situation than me. And I'm not sure if you're going to land on your feet because you are so deep within this cult that once you get kicked out, it's over. You have no backup plan.
Chris, do you think I'm not so sure that Vlad, you should do so much like meta talk, like talking about being canceled or whatever. You should just keep going, just keep shooting the thing, and just kind of say like,
I agree.
Especially because the people who actually watch the show, they already know that you did a controversial Roger Ver interview, and that because they watched it.
You can consider this the bottom. You've assembled the lowest quality guests that you possibly can, so everything is up from here.
First, right?
Was it really the lowest quality?
Well, we could take our shirts off.
Definitely BU would be like saying we were trying to make the show as bad as possible. We're gonna have after Roger Ver, we've got Adolf Hitler coming on next or something like that. Like it would be like just very inverted and kind of ironic. So I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta give Chris credit because he was one of the first podcasts I've ever heard saying, "Give this show 1 star." Just say it's awful.
It's kind of a foul to want attention or to want to be praised online. And in general, like people don't like that kind of thing. And then I just gotta lead to that. Like you're not gonna win otherwise. And like you really shouldn't care, for your own sanity. You should just try to find whatever it is you're looking for, either truth or, it's just meeting or whatever it is.
I do think you had that quality that Bitcoin Uncensored was very fun, and you could tell that you guys were having fun, and so it was like to be a part of it was kind of neat.
A lot of fun.
And it was just like these people, the poor. Sometimes I honestly still think about it. Like I'm walking down the street and I think of like the blockchain encounter of the fifth kind guy, or I think about the poor like IBM people that you like cut in. It's that one part, like this poor like no offense, these poor like Indian people on stage like giving this huge talk about like, well, everything is going to be on the blockchain, trustless and encrypted,
Yeah.
and they have no idea what they're talking about at all, and just certain things are just
Chris,
they're
You
just
can't
like
do a lot of that now. A
yeah.
lot of that was,
I
think about this,
agree.
a lot of that was just how new the space was for like broadcasting online, not even the crypto space. It was like,
No, I
okay,
completely
there's
agree.
now, and the people who like, I don't know, came from the old world are just gonna like come into this assuming they're going into the other normal channel.
Yeah,
That,
it's definitely
Or-
it's absolutely key that I think there was kind of like a Goldilocks like time in media, you know, like where because also like your show significantly pushed the bound. Like I knew about like 4chan and stuff like that, but you guys were severely pushing the boundaries on like what is allowed like in discourse, you know, like constant filthy swearing, like the Alphabet commercial. I
yeah,
like literally had to
right.
pull over my car. I was like, is this real? Like I was like, what is going on? And just like all the
Forgot about
jokes, the
that.
prison wallet and everything, you know, like all these jokes were like, you know, because like you know about like something awful and fortunate, but it was like for some reason that was still like clinging to the anonymity of the internet. Like it was just like a message board and you just kind of read it. But I really do think I can't really imagine. I know there's like the Howard Stern show, but I can't really think of anything that you guys were going completely crazy. Like the people you would interview, Flocka Felicia, like it was just like it was like mind blowing. And then almost like the election of Donald Trump, like did definitely mainstreamed the idea of just being like really, really rude in like a weird way and like getting big and not being canceled for it, you know, like the politically incorrect type of it. So there was something about it the year 2015, 2016 that was the the prelude, the preamble to this like idea of just like you can just there's no line like of what you can't say online. Like you can just say filthy, filthy stuff, and it's like everyone has to just deal with it. That was very new, I think, in 2015, 2016. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
My thought.
for sure. That's another thing here with all of like the cancellation allegations. Like the other side of it is that you're also permitted the full reign of expression from which the cancellation can come forth. So like I don't exactly know what that says, but it's a bit of a contradiction. Like yes, you could be canceled, but also you can run around with your shirt off and like talk to drug addicts and you know that kind of stuff. Like it's not.
but you weren't
Not a
just
coherent story.
yeah, you weren't just doing crazy stuff online though. Like I was actually just talking with Simon Dixon in a Twitter Spaces yesterday. There was a couple hundred people in the space, and they were asking about the early days of Bitcoin. And I said, like for me, one of the most Bitcoin moments that I can remember is at the American Banker Conference in was it 2015, I think it was, or 2016. Where you were there and you were filming, and you had this interaction with Blythe Masters, who was like, you know, this, you know, people who don't know, she's like this maybe 50 something, you know, Wall Street executive who was on the cover of Forbes or Fortune magazine around that time. And I mean, I remember you were wearing a baseball cap, and I've got a great picture of you with like, it's a tie-dye cat t-shirt and shorts. And like you stood up in the middle of conference and you had like this conversation with her in front of everybody. And I think the consensus of the room was that she was right and you were wrong because of the way that you looked. And you were very polite to her. And I remember thinking like, he is totally right and she is completely mistaken and she has no idea and everybody else in here thinks that she's right. And for me, like that was one of the most Bitcoin moments that I can remember, because all the signals that you would have that somebody was intelligent and whatever points they were making were correct were completely flipped in this scenario. And I think, like to Paul's point, that was a unique point in time because you couldn't get in the same room with those people now. Like it
No.
the way it just works now, it would not have been possible.
Yeah, we had the confidence because we all knew what was coming. Like we had like a little secret that we knew we were all gonna kind of make a lot of money really soon because this was about to happen and people were catching on. So there was just like a confidence of people like being themselves and like a shared secret. I think that culture is kind of, that's kind of the point where we were all together. We all kind of were way ahead of them. But governments, regulators, TradFi, we were like miles ahead of them. And I think they may have caught up now. So that's where we may be missing some of that old culture.
I don't know. That's a very good point, Wayne. I certainly agree. That was a great time in my life. I don't know what I look back at some of that stuff now, and even in just the context of what I deal with these days, that something happened. I don't know if this is my generation or just me personally, but I never got what's the word? I just never got a good feeling from the prestigious people around me. I had many prestigious people that I was exposed to in my life, and by and large, these people were very unimpressive to me. And that may have just been my experience. I don't know. I suspect that the systems by which we decide who's prestigious are the culprit. In any case, I found, particularly in recent years, like if you split the world into two spheres of comprehension, this is the only way to do it, but one way. Sphere one being like the realm of propriety, and then sphere two being the matters of truth. And like we can come up with justifications and rationalizations in either sphere for any given event that occurs. So like let it be Bitcoin. Like you can be like the proper answer to what is Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. However, the true answer to what Bitcoin is a digital currency that is used where the censored devices or censored transactions are happening, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And seemingly like the prestigious people only concerned themselves with like the sphere of propriety. And that's a very dim view of the world. It's not really going to tell you much.
But that's where they get their identity from. That's where they get their power from. That's why it's so important to them.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. My general theory on that too is like the selection mechanisms, and I saw this a lot when I was younger. It's the people that are obedient that get selected for advancement typically, which is dumb. It's like really stupid. But whatever, like it's fine by me. It works to my benefit, and it works to my benefit in the ways that you saw at like the American Banker Conference. Like, okay, you're all here because you're obedient, fine. Like, let's see what I can add to the picture. And to the degree that I was able to offer prophecy, it's anyone's interpretation, but to the degree that Blythe was able to offer prophecy with zero. Her project, last I heard, got canceled finally over there at the Australian Block Exchange. So she said the proper thing, and it was without any prophetic value. And then I said the improper thing, and I think anybody who listened to me there is probably loaded by now. Maybe not, I don't know. But like, if they at least gave some consideration to like Bitcoin, fair.
Robin Hanson has a little thing on this, the experts versus the high status people. I forgot, he has another way of phrasing it, but it's basically like lots of people can be experts. So like everyone's an expert in their job. So like even if you're a janitor somewhere, like you're the only one who knows like which key goes where and how, like which way to hold this mop on this hallway or something. So we all have a lot of expertise, and people are experts on how to be, a brother to their sister or something like that. So some people have experts and elites. Yeah, that's it. But the elites are the high status people, and those are basically the people who have like the microphone or something. This was like a BU idea also, like that you have like the conch shell, or you have someone is allowed to speak for some reason, and then we repeat and amplify what they say. So these elites are like professional bullshitters basically, because their job is just to figure out what the elite opinion is and then like repeat it. And so they are not really they're not critical thinking about the subject. They're only critical thinking about like what the other high status people are interested in like what the official, what you were saying is like the official position that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. They'll hear someone, chairman of the Fed, say such and such, and then they'll say, oh yeah, when they're asked on stage, they'll just repeat that. And so they have their way of figuring out the elite opinion. And we all as a society have kind of agreed that we can't listen to everyone. So we listen to them sort of first, and then we listen to other people later. And this is just like the weird system. So like but elites and experts do not necessarily have anything to do with each other. So you could have like the autistic engineer guy could be like not elite very easily, and it's almost like sometimes people like Elon Musk like gyrate chaotically between those two, and then there's other people who are like we're all an expert in something, but this idea expert versus elite, like very different types of a thing. Like usually like sometimes a professor can be an elite. Well, you get the idea, I think.
Well, Paul, I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
even worse. Well, and if I can interject for just a second, I think it's even worse than what Paul said, because in my experience, the people who are, the higher their status is, the more afraid they are to say what they really feel in public. So we get this soft language that doesn't show how they really feel. You talk to them behind the scenes and they'll express their frustration or their true thoughts. So not only are the highest status people given the biggest microphones, but they say the softest, most risk-averse things.
It's very vague. I agree. Like Robin Hanson has another great saying. He says, that's the problem with being clear. Sometimes you're clearly wrong, which is like him indirectly endorsing being vague sometimes. So like you see, it happens at a conference all the time. People go up on stage and it's like they're not even speaking English. They speak like a different language that you can just ignore politely. Everyone just sitting in the audience, just ignoring it completely. And then they're finished speaking and then everyone claps. And it's just like really vague, generic, forgettable dialogue. And then sometimes, like Chris was saying, you talk to them in some other context, like in the directness, changes. Like people on stage say, oh, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of movement into the whatever space, something that's really vague. And then backstage, like, oh yeah, that guy's a fucking idiot or whatever, or this is the worst. This series of machines is the worst that anyone's ever done, and none of them work. And as they say, like really direct things that have a lot of actual specific meaning, but on stage they really speak like this professionally vague language that just doesn't mean anything, and everyone sits in the audience just staring at it. It happens all the time.
The best thing about it is you guys were authentic, even if you were idiots, and we appreciated that.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. I still think a lot about authenticity. A lot about that. It's important to me. I don't think that I succeed, but it's at least an ideal in my personal life. It's important.
It's hard to tell when you're being sarcastic sometimes, or how much.
Good. I mean, there's so much like crap, I guess you could say, but there's really layers of like dishonesty now that I think in order to communicate any idea, it's often like through these levels of irony sometimes that like would appear to be important, but the greater point is to get you to think in a certain way that is close to the truth. I see myself doing that a lot, which I'm not proud of. It's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about English. Like, I don't think it's going to work. Like, which is
I don't think English is going to work.
Just the language is not healthy, and I don't know who the custodians are, but I think they're going to be like Google and Facebook and these companies that are making money by eviscerating the meaning of the words. Like,
I mean, are you sort of speaking in code here, as you are wont to do?
No.
English. Well, English is the word. English is the language of U.S. politicians and sort of the woke movement, and English and language policing is their weapon for trying to move the Overton window and change the meaning of things. Is what you're saying is a reaction to that?
That's part of it. I would say more specifically, you can see that denotation is being displaced by connotation writ large in most words. In fact, at any time some denotative value appears, like let's take AI because that's fashionable. Okay, like AI had some denotation along the lines of what we could, I guess, call generative AI, which was like the model of the computer that can talk to us or something, or the thinking computer that can displace like human agency. Okay, that in my mind is some realm of denotation. However, once it hits the internet, it'll be entirely a matter of like moral connotation. And as such, what will happen is anything that is quote unquote good, or that we wish to be perceived as good, is going to be AI. And you'll see now as every product, service, etc., is shoehorned into the connotation that is AI by being labeled AI. And there's a lot of tangential points in there, but like in part what you'll find is that the reading level goes down and down and down, which seems like it's happening. And I don't know that there's like some like great catastrophe that will happen when it gets low enough. Though I wonder if this isn't like the prelude to conflict. And, you know, there's a lot goes with it, but that is part of the political process as well. Though that has preceded the internet. We could go back far. You know, like the war on everything basically started, I guess, with the war on poverty and the LBJ administration. Like that might be where the politicians started. It's the internet writ large, I think, that's accelerating that trend in all spaces. And so I use the example of AI, but that applies to every single word. People hear a word and they don't try to even think exactly about some concrete goal. What they try to find out is like, am I in trouble or will I be in trouble? And how do I stay out of trouble? Like that's sort of the realm of connotation as best I can tell. And I don't like it that way.
A lot of those words is Bitcoin, L2, shitcoin,
Yeah,
Bitcoin only.
Yeah.
None of these things make any have any meaning. Yeah, it's just the culture.
Yeah, like take Lightning. Like Lightning had some very specific denotation when it was announced and when it was offered to the market. And it was announced by probably a prestigious person somewhere in the Bitcoin Core development community. Thus, it had some like positive affinity. And from there, people wanted to like decorate their own language with Lightning. And before long, it just like wasn't even anything anymore. Like
Yes, it no longer has anything to do with HTLCs, which is the
For long, the name of
specific
the
definition.
Bitcoin only VC is Lightning. Like they only are Bitcoin, but Lightning. It's the crazy. It's just insane.
This is also in part why I think we're like having these increasingly golden cow worshiping behaviors online. You know, be it Bitcoin or social justice or women or whatever comes around. Like I suspect it is partly related to this process by which something becomes so like connotatively imbued with value that it just turns into full-on religion, and like people will just assume bow to blockchain, give it a chance to like be seen doing so. Like I don't know if you get that point or not. You could probably find some video of somebody doing that, but like metaphorically that's what you see. And so I think for reasons like this, the English language is not going to be healthy. Like, so I'm trying to divest myself of it. It's not going well.
So since you still need to talk, what languages are you using nowadays?
Yeah, what's the better language?
Yeah.
That's really...
So I think the better languages are going to be as far as you can, whatever language is farthest from high-speed internet. Like this is something I kind of realized in Colombia, because like you can.
Oh my God, this is a really crazy idea.
Greek.
I know. Yeah, so Greek would be good. Latin's good. I've been specializing in Hebrew just because it's easier. It's easier to find Hebrew speakers than it is any of these other ancient dead languages. And it's sort of like cultural heritage also, which is nice. But I think Latin would be really useful.
But English is the language of science. English is the language of internet.
Yeah, I agree with Wayne on this one. George Orwell wrote this book, Politics in the English Language. You read that? You gotta read that essay, Chris. He says English is being invaded by like Latin and like pseudo French stuff is like invaded. So he's like, we have like backhoe is like the Anglo-Saxon, but like excavator is the Latin word for like the same thing. The Latin words are always vaguer, and it's more easy to do the politician speech in Latin because they're just more abstract. So like you say like a domestic abuse versus wife beater, or you say something like I don't know, like well, I was gonna think of like spirit versus ghost. Ghost is like very visceral. It's like scary, and it's like in your face. Spirit is like vague. It could just be whatever. Oh, spirit, whatever. Could be anything. So he's pulling for English and saying that you should not write it. But he famously concludes in that essay, he says that English has been getting worse over time. And he says, like a drunk person, a man can drink and because his life is so bad, and then his life can get even worse because he drinks. And he has a passage about saying that English is getting worse, and because it's getting worse, people's thoughts are getting stupider. So he's really on the same wavelength as you in that idea.
Yeah, I don't think English is going to fall off a cliff and we're all going to forget how to speak. But I can tell you for sure, what I've already seen in very obvious ways. Once you go down this path of setting a minimum height to enter, in the Monero parlance, on the languages that you use, the quality of the speakers improve dramatically. You get rid of a lot of people from your conversation that don't need to be there. And I think this was always the point of Latin, before the Anglos came, and I guess World War I started and the language started to deteriorate from there. But we need it. This is why all of that existed, I think, in the first place. It's you have maybe you're for lack of a better description, you have shitcoiner talk, which is just the bottom of the barrel of languages. And then you may have Latin was what it was, or maybe it'll be Hebrew, or maybe it'll be Latin or Greek or something else. I don't know. But it'll be only certain people are able to learn that language. And then also you won't have these same forces where the connotation is perverted by companies and political actors. Where no one's going to sit around and start a campaign to re-connotate some esoteric Latin word or some esoteric Hebrew word, and so it's on your discussion. It seems that's my theory. We'll see, how far I get into this. It's a very challenging project. It's not easy, and it's not working so far. But I'm holding out hope. I have faith in this.
Most of this already happened in 1780 something during the French Revolution, when they were even trying to change the number of days in a week to 10 so that people forget when it's Sunday and they're supposed to go to church. They changed the number of days that they were working. They made 100 minutes in an hour and all sorts of crazy changes like this. Made no sense. They changed the language. Using the word vous, which is the polite way of saying you, was good enough of a reason to have you beheaded. And I think most of this was already experimented, and we can have some very good examples from there and where it leads. It's just that people discover these ideas and they become radicalized by them and they go too far. Maybe the internet has helped polarize opinions, and it's easier to find some echo chamber where you think that all the civilized world and everyone who's smart agrees with you and everyone else is just a dumb fuck or something. But anyway, I just remembered that I have bills to pay and that my rent is due next week, so I got to do some ad readings. Sorry, guys. So
go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to present all of them because I'm not sure when I'm going to have this opportunity again within this episode. It's getting very intense. The first one is sideshift.ai. If you ever get paid in a CBDC wannabe, like a stable coin, dump that shit for free market sound money. Whatever you think that is, I'm not going to tell you buy BTC or buy LTC or buy XMR or whatever. Just swap that CBDC wannabe, which is the stable coin that has a trusted setup, that is not something for which Bitcoin was invented, and get something much better. So go to sideshift.ai and do that. And you can also swap your Bitcoin for whatever you want, for whatever reason you may have. I'm not going to judge here. And it's pretty cool. Sideshift.ai. The other sponsor is Wasabi Wallet. And these guys are out of business right now. But I promised them that I'm still going to promote their wallet because it still works, It's open source software. You can still
This is like the opposite of what this is like. If you have a bunch of Bitcoin attributes and you shuffle them around randomly, they went out of business, but we're still reading the ad, and their software does work. It's like an ad lib of a Bitcoin company.
Yeah, but nothing's changed, It's just that their CoinJoin coordinator was shut down, and now you can join another one. It's just one line of code that you must modify in the config file. Anyway, Wasabi Wallet, pretty cool coin joins. You can still use it for the SPV wallet, which downloads block filters. It has Tor natively. It has a lot of cool features. Check it out, wasabiwallet.io. It also has a buy anything button. So if you're into buying stuff with your Bitcoin, you have an interface with another website that's called ShopInBit that happens over Tor. You tell them what you want and where you want it to get delivered. You pay and you get it within 1 or 2 weeks. I'm not sure exactly. Depends on where you are in the world. It's pretty cool. wasabiwallet.io, check it out. There's also Starknet, which is an implementation of Starkware. And these guys are basically doing something which is very avant-garde with cryptography, zero-knowledge proofs, and they don't require a trusted setup. It's made by the same people who brought you Zcash, but right now they figured out a way to do it without the ceremony. And their message is activate OpCat on Bitcoin, because if they do activate OpCat on Bitcoin, we're going to have Starks and they can offer some privacy and scalability. And honestly, I'm all for any sort of experimentation. And speaking of experimentation and innovation, Layer 2 Labs, Paul, you're sponsoring my show.
Oh, nice. I'm here. Okay, great. Wait, let me do it now with the updated info.
Oh, you want to do it?
Well, how long do I have to speak?
As much as you
I'm
want.
just kidding. That's an ironic thing because I'm going to speak whenever I feel like commenting on anything. But the latest thing is we have the Zcash sidechain works on Signet now. So that's no offense to Wasabi, but it's way better at scale because you automatically join with anyone who's using it in a way. And I have this thing melt cast, so you click these two buttons and it moves the code. So this is like mostly a clone of Zcash, but with like a little GUI in front of it. So that's pretty neat. So go to layer2labs.com/downloads or download with no S. I should make it redirect. But so that's pretty cool. And we have Thunder, the large block sidechain that works on Signet. Actually, I think almost everything, I don't want to jinx, almost everything works for now, but I'm always tinkering with the front end and then I break the front end, wrecking it. If you from the command line, it all works, but no one cares about that. So try the DriveNet launcher. We'll give you fake Signet coins. There's a faucet. There's blocks.drivechain.info, which shows how many blocks they'll have to see if you have synchronized. Join t.me/DC insiders and try the solver for yourself. And that is the best way of learning about what it does and why it's important. So that's the end of that. But speaking of activating OpCat or anything, I don't know, everyone here is very interesting in mining disrupt. The mining pools are very deferential to like the customers, the miners. They defer to the pool. They're like, we don't know what's going on. Like they don't know about. They're very ignorant of many of these matters, and then you would think that would entitle the pool to take more of a leadership role, but instead I think the pools also defer to their customers. They say, oh, well, if our customers want to do it, then we'll do it. So it's kind of a little bit of a giant deferring loop. But I do think that, like I asked like the brains people about like, hey, what about like a OpCat or whatever? And they're just like, So a lot of people, I think, are afraid to have any opinion at all, even on something that is as simple as concatenating two objects into one
Why
object,
people are
which is already
afraid?
in Bitcoin.
Nothing ever happens.
But I think it's related to just all of the drama with SegWit and even with Taproot. People think Taproot caused inscriptions or something. So,
That's what happens when you kick the developers out of the room. And
it's very interesting. Some of them would all complain. I don't want to name any names, but people would they would share stories about various emails they got since they were running a pool. They would just share stories about like, oh, we did this or that thing that has like no meaning, and they would get angry emails from people saying like, why do you hate this such and such? Why do you whatever hate ordinals? Stuff that's like not even on topic at all. So the knowledge gap between the miners and the software people is enormous, and even the pools can try to communicate things with like memos, but even they are not understood. So there's an extremely low, it's almost like an opportunity of some kind. The Bitcoin Uncensored hat would be like, now it's time to like ship some kind of product that like just like eviscerates these people and their complete and total lack of knowledge. But it's kind of like just a weird situation where you have a lot of people, a lot of money on the line, and the knowledge gap is very big. But I think it should be possible to get through, with like someone makes like the right YouTube video or something. I don't know. It's very interesting here, though. Definitely gathering a lot of info from people.
I think in general,
mining disrupt everyone. Commercial for that.
Okay.
One last ad, Chris, and then we can get to that point.
Sorry about that. I didn't know I derail everything.
So hodling.ch, these guys are from Switzerland, and if you need help with your self-custody, They're going to tell you exactly what kind of wallets you should be using, if you need hardware wallets, if you need multi-sig. It depends on how much you have and what you want to do with it. So if you're part of a company that wants to add Bitcoin to its reserves, they can help you with the multi-sig setup and provide to you all the consultancy that you need with the Swiss privacy that is really interesting. So check out hodling.ch. And thank you for sitting through these ads.
Thank you for.
All right, Chris.
Advertisers. No, I was just in general. The theme of communication is weirdly present in a lot of spheres, and the deterioration. Like, we decided to wire everybody up to everybody, thinking that that would like improve communication, and it kind of did, and it kind of didn't. I'm struck by just when I have to make routine phone calls now to something like, you know, Comcast, certainly Airbnb, you know, various. The communication has never been worse. Like, it's very strange to me that that's where things are.
Well, Chris, what do you think about how things, you know, kind of bringing it back to Bitcoin? Like, how do you think things have changed with Bitcoin? We were talking a few moments ago through some of these ads about inscriptions and OpCat and the other stuff. You know, you were a pioneer, let's call it, in the days of building layer 2 solutions on top of Bitcoin with Counterparty. And you are also a pioneer in blockchain technology. I recall being at Roundtable this past year, talking to a bunch of people. I was talking to people about inscriptions and ordinals and things like that. They didn't even know what Counterparty was. Like, there was a complete lack of knowledge about a whole set of historical technologies and learning experiences that aren't being pulled forward to the present. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts about what you see now reflected upon, you know, what we all experienced a decade ago?
Okay, so the revolving circus is like a kind of description I would offer. There's been many times in my life, people who have no idea what my history with Bitcoin is, and they're getting into the circus ride for the first time, telling me all these things that we've been through, that we all know what the conclusion will be. Yet that was never presented to them, and they will be, you know, blissfully ignorant of those endeavors in the past. And like, a lot of these new technologies just seem like, to me, repetitions of the old cycle for a new audience that just got onto the ride for the first time. And it's hard for me not to see it that way. There are some people who I think are like going in the ride, like Space Mountain is like open to them. They went in Space Mountain for the first time, they made it to the end, and then they got right back in and got on the ride again. No problem. Like I've certainly done that even in many ways, but like, they'll do it over and over and over again, and every time it'll be like a complete surprise to them how the ride ends. And I don't know what to say about that, but it does seem to me like the blockchain space and the Bitcoin space or the crypto space, take your pick, is a kind of Space Mountain ride that is just perpetually going, and the carnival barkers get people in, and they sort of the same ride. I guess they modernize it, you know, like, I guess like it's the same Space Mountain, but they have like a new facade over the sort of like decorations on the ride, you know, like there's the 70s edition of Space Mountain, the 80s edition of Space Mountain, the 90s edition. So yeah, like this year's like buzzword is both new and also very similar to the buzzwords from 5 years ago, and not very different. And like, I got a good friend now who's like, I'm not gonna say his name, he's like an Ethereum core developer. I'm just like amazed, because I remember telling him back in like 2011, 2012 about this thing. He wasn't interested. Now he's totally locked into the ride, explaining to me how they're building all of these great new technologies at, I think Consensus is where he works for. I forget, one of those kind of companies. And I just kind of like smile, you know. I'm not even gonna like.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
No, I think it's a very, Wayne and Chris, it's a very good point that, like, I almost think like we're still, I hate to say we're still early because it's the thing that idiots say, but you know, I guess we could be an idiot for a day. But what I mean by that is it's almost like, I mean, we are early still. Like, people still do not get it for some reason. And we are going to see it repeat again. Like we will see it repeat, which is shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never going to stop.
And maybe there'll be a time when something is launched and it becomes used by 8 billion people, and it just like has like hyper whateverization, But it's, I don't know, it's a hard point to articulate, but I'm trying to point out that it's like, yeah, like people really do not care that Counterparty was before Ordinals, or even that there's this long history of stuff in between. So it's like,
But
it is a new group of people each time, though. It is not like it. You know what I mean? Like the people who would have been reached by Counterparty is like this very different set of people than reached by Ordinals. So it's completely. It's the same ride, but it is completely new people.
But
I mean, I
interesting
just don't. Yeah.
is the people that I spoke with, who who didn't know what Counterparty was and weren't aware of this. They didn't want to know. They wanted to continue to pretend that the thing that they were doing was new and groundbreaking, and they didn't care to learn about the history of things that kind of or not even the technical stuff, just the practical matters around building a community and driving developer adoption and writing good documentation, like all those mundane things. It was just sort of like, oh, we'll just figure it out when we get there. And it was a certain like dismissiveness and disdain for the past. It's like, oh, this is the future. I'm working on something new. That stuff is the failed stuff of the past. You guys must not know anything because that stuff failed.
But it also carries over to developers, who actually the only ones who really like the subject matter experts that could actually make a difference. They're kind of been dismissed completely.
Well, I think people are early. Like that's what I was trying to say. I couldn't quite figure out what to say, but I was trying to say that Counterparty was early. You know what I mean? Like, and even probably inscriptions are early or whatever to like make the transition to whatever other stuff, digital assets on the blockchain. I don't know, but I'm just saying like it's very, very likely that someone, you can have a really, really good idea, but it can just be at the wrong time. And then there's like nothing anyone can do about that.
Yeah, that's always the case. I mean, you never know where this stuff is going to go. Like here in Texas, they're starting this thing called the Texas Stock Exchange, and I think Citadel and BlackRock are behind it.
I like that project a lot.
We're gonna beat them to it. That's what
it may be very possible that they take a tech stack that is some derivative of some of this blockchain stuff that's been developed, and they use that as the foundation for some securities trading thing. And maybe it doesn't adhere to all of the strict doctrine of the proper blockchain stuff, but maybe it becomes successful, and that's and then everything else will be reframed as a step along the way to get to this now new and great thing that has come into the world. Like I guess the point behind saying all of that is that you never really know where this stuff is going to go. And timing is absolutely, critical. And we all know that, Google wasn't the first search engine. DOS wasn't even the operating system. It takes a while for these technological innovations to iterate, and for the market conditions to be right for them to really take off.
I think to the point of the ordinals crowd. Again, I would defer to like this model of propriety versus truth, maybe. So you have a group of people who are there for the right reasons. They're not there to find truth. That's a very different goal. And so you're under the assumption that they're like you're headed in the same spirit that they are, and you're not. And so, for better or worse or otherwise, like that's where that rub seems to be. Like I see this pattern a lot. Once you start looking for it, you'll probably find it more. Just fundamentally, like not everyone's headed to the same. A lot of it. Okay, so this is like, forgive me in advance. Okay, if we define spirit as a group's objective sense of perfection, if we use that definition for spirit, so like you go to the football game and there's the spirit of victory. Like if you polled people on what it is to have a perfect day, they would say, oh, the perfect day would be for my team to win. Okay, great. That would constitute some matter of spirit. So then you are going to these people who are the ordinals people. Their spirit is not the same spirit as yours. Their spirit is probably to be accepted by their peers, and to seek wealth maybe by way of like good positive feels with the group around them, receiving social validation, like these sorts of like senses of perfection. As opposed to what I think was the BU attitude, which was like, well, we're going to figure out what the truth is, be it right or wrong. It kind of didn't matter. Like that truth was like the overriding spirit, I think, of a lot of our pursuits. And so like when you offer truth to people, like you're assuming that that's what they want. And like I wish I'd known these things when I was younger, though if I had known these things, the show wouldn't have been as much fun. So that's kind of where I'm at with some of that. I don't know if that helps people watching. At this point, what I kind of do, and I would even like if there's any coalition of like old timers that really wants to like seek advancement, like just lean into it. Just accelerate it. Give it 110% gas. Accept that you're not going to reform anybody. It ain't going to happen. And that all you can do is push them further down the path they're on. And if you take that attitude towards a lot of this stuff, something tells me we'll probably see a greater traction in sort of like the original wants of our coalition as the original BU listeners, rather than like hoping that the crowd will see it our way, which will never happen. It seems,
Yeah, you can't change people's minds by arguing with them over the internet. It's just on any subject, it's not possible.
Yeah, some people can, but the vast majority cannot. And
statistically, it's a very small fraction.
That's why we have code and pull requests, and there was a whole process at some point that we were supposed to get through all this, and we gave it up. That's where I think we went wrong, and that's what Bitcoin was. It was just code, and we kind of gave that up, and now we're trying to.
We wanted to believe it was just code, but it wasn't just code. It was like fiscal policy and like social policy and like market feedback,
you could have status in the Bitcoin mailing list. Like it's always been a human endeavor full of political. I agree with Chris 100%. It's always been that, but things like Twitter and social media and the conference circuit and everything have taken it off from being this niche area where you could have this status or this prestige into being basically all the world's a stage for everything. And some people flourish in that environment and they like it. I can do okay with it when I need to, but I don't prefer that world.
Something on that point, like there is, if you can consider like the performativity in our language, like the introduction of that term, like all your life were graded on how you performed, like your academic performance, your work performance. If you didn't perform, you were labeled a bad actor. I think that from the level of the institution, we made a lot of decisions in the functioning of society that rewarded this level of intermediation between like what something is and how it looks. And then, like you said, there are people that are excellent performers. They've spent their whole lives studying how to perform. And on the matter of who they are, it's a wholly different subject. But these people are the ones that often succeed online for various reasons, some good, some bad, or in general in life they do. And I think a lot of it's the institutional inertia that promotes this kind of thinking.
Yeah, so Wayne, I gotta disagree with one of the points that you made previously about ordinals and counterparty, because I do remember 3 years ago at the peak of the NFT mania, people were searching for the historic pieces, something that made sense for them, something that they could justify as being old enough and this collection that is exquisite and something that they can shill. And basically they started digging into the history. They did discover Rare Pepe, which I think is bigger than CryptoPunks or whatever. And they did discover that there were some crazy collections, like some Japanese girls that were part of a card collection. There were some cards by Theo Goodman. There were some cards by Thomas Hunt, Mad Bitcoins.
Yep.
Mike in Space, I think right now Mike in Space has hit the home run with his stamps. And at one point it became so ridiculous that they started to run nodes for Namecoin, hoping that they're going to be able to retrieve some assets from Namecoin. Yeah. And to everyone else listening to this, if you don't know what Namecoin is, I guess you should ask Paul Stortz, because he's the one who's building a sidechain for it.
Vlad, just to respond quickly, I agree with, I have had great experiences with people as well. when I said that people weren't interested, I was talking very narrowly about the group of people that I was in at that particular moment. But yes, there are plenty of people who are trying to build things on Bitcoin who do take a look back at what's been done before, and they do want to learn from the history. I didn't mean to paint that. I apologize if I accidentally painted that as a broad statement for all the people who are trying to build things on top of Bitcoin.
No,
Movement.
it's funny because now we also have a reactionary movement against all of these assets being built on Bitcoin without asking for permission, you know? And you have religious zealots like Luke Dash Jr., who created his own cult, started his own mining company. I'm not sure if you're aware of all of this, Chris, but it's really insane out there. He started his own cult right now, and they all want to filter all of these transactions with a custom piece of code that they have to embed into their nodes, and they all mine with the same mining pool. They run the same node client, and they isolate
I don't know
themselves
anything about
socially.
that. I didn't know anything about that. That being said, that I think is the future. I have to say, you're going to have to lean into these religious movements if you're going to see any coalition endeavor succeed. It seems to me, and you're seeing this with others, like not just with Luke, like Balaji. I realized actually I'm wearing a gray shirt, which was completely unintentional, but Balaji's been promoting this gray shirt idea. Makes perfect sense. I think that's probably for anybody who wants to continue online in these coalitions, they're going to have to get increasingly culty and just lean into it. Like, you're going to have to know, without irony or with, this is the direction which we're going to expand.
Choose your cult wisely.
Yeah, for sure.
But we don't have a cult, so we have to find a cult.
I mean, to that point, Chris, you could like even think about like the people had like the UASF hats, or even like other kind of like things about like how to be a Bitcoin maximalist, you have to be like a meat eating weightlifter type guy, no sunscreen lotion, no seed oil. But like, so there's a lot of evidence for that.
Yeah, I think the goal would be to get your cult to the point where it will be able to collect taxes. I'm not positive about this, but if you can create enough faith to or social signals to convince your group to pay taxes, that's probably what's necessary. I'm not positive about it. There might be other ways to do it, but I don't know if Luke's already down that path.
Yeah.
Apology is talking about the nation state, being something that is on the internet. So, I mean, maybe that's the future. We'll all join cults and pay taxes to those cults, and it'll be just like religions in the past, and tithing and all that kind of stuff.
I do think we're going to decentralize. I really do. I just don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a Bitcoin thing. And I think I'm just seeing this here and there incidentally, like the sort of level of like what I would have expected to be like a prototype decentralization model is happening in various places, like in Latin America and even a little bit like in California. My sister tells me some things, and I wouldn't be surprised if we step in that direction. It just doesn't happen online. And yeah, like the goal of any of these groups should be to collect taxes, I think. And like what you spend it on and all that's very complicated. And how you like produce enough trust, like, over the finances to like judiciously, determine spending and all that, fine. But like the thing is, your decentralized group is going to have to like defend itself against the one next door. So the quicker you get to the tax collection phase, the quicker you can do that. And we'll see if that's what happens. I don't know how much people actually mean what they say they want, or if they will just be forced into this. But yeah, seems that way to me.
Well, what's the difference between collecting taxes in the metaphor that you're using and offering something that's of value that people repeatedly purchase?
I think the burden of taxes is like psychological, like that's when you're in. Like there's two ways I think to get people into your cult, roughly. Like some level of sacrifice, which taxes represent, like just pure sacrifice. It can't be like a purchase where you get something out of it. Like it has to be like I have like abstained from some pleasure, or I have sacrificed my labor with no expectation for the greater whole, and with no expectation of getting direct benefit. That's one way. Now I forgot the other way. There's another way. I forgot. But I mean, that's the significance, at least, of the tax collection. Now, the other way is voting. Yeah, that would be the other way. Voting, I think, also has that possibility, but I don't think it's as strong as tax collection. So
Have you been following what's been going on with all the politics stuff with Bitcoin and how it's becoming like an election issue?
oh yeah, one thing about that I think is like it kind of credits the carnival ride analogy. Like I saw that Donald Trump is like,
Oh my God.
he took $1 million Bitcoin donation, and now he's like you know, doing the Bitcoin circus ride basically.
It's even,
So yeah,
I mean, in the sense that the crypto lobby was described by Chamath Palihapitiya as the most powerful lobby out there. And if you look at the fundraising numbers, which is all publicly available information, like crypto-oriented PACs are basically outraising everybody else. And this is not something that's going to go away. I mean, I've been trying my damnedest to like not get dragged into this stuff. Like, I don't want to fly out to Washington, D.C. again and like talk to people and stuff like that. I did take the Elizabeth Warren, I'm building an anti-crypto army, and made it into a Donald Trump, I'm building a crypto army meme, which has gone around the internet quite a bit. So I'm helping contribute in my own way that way. But yeah, I just think this is what happens when Bitcoin grows up. This is like an inevitable consequence of Bitcoin entering. And I know we've had this conversation before, but it's an inevitable consequence of Bitcoin entering. Maybe it's like awkward teenage years again.
it could also just be like the Albanian Civil War, like that. This is what happened to Albania. This is the same, very similar stuff, where you have these like, for lack of a better description, you have like these bad faith markets that don't go regulated and eclipse the size of the wealth of the good faith markets, or like the incentives are such that you saw this even in companies like at Microsoft, you had a greater incentive to pimp your coin than you did to collect your work check. So like if I could use my job at Microsoft to promote my shitcoin, that is a wiser financial decision. Like, so that could be going on at a macro level. Like, I don't actually think, I like it. Like, I'm invested. Like, if you want to make me money, fine. But I don't actually know that like this crypto thing is really gonna work ultimately. Like, it could just be like that they have to cut it out because the incentives are too screwy, or they let it run wild and it displaces everything, and like Bitcoiners get exactly what they asked for and it wasn't what you wanted. That could happen too. I don't know. But that's when I hear these things, that's what it sounds like to me.
But it's a very interesting idea that in order to get to this point where we would be a huge lobby, we almost needed like the previous cults. It's like a little spiral upward, you know? It's not exactly the same roller coaster each time, although it's sort of like repeated at each scale. But
Yeah.
it's like now
we
needed those pre-cults. We needed Vitalik in order to get to Ted Cruz speaking at Mining Disrupt, which he just did, by the way. He was here. So
that's
Why,
I guess
I've been incredibly impressed with Ted Cruz talking about Bitcoin. Like, he's very knowledgeable, very on point. It was very surprising for every time I've heard him talk about it, both publicly and privately. He's surprisingly more knowledgeable than most of the other politicians. You know, regardless of how you feel about the political perspective, at least he knows the subject matter.
he did actually make a joke on stage. He said that probably there's only 9 other senators who know what Bitcoin is. Which I don't know if that's I don't know if that's true, but that's possible. Certainly possible. Certainly they don't like computers a lot over there in DC. It seems so.
They're still running Windows 98.
Oh my God! I wish I could still run Windows 98. That was a joy to use. I enjoyed Windows 98.
I think that came out
Modern things suck.
yesterday.
I think that like the bar mitzvah is a better model for like people's blockchain like accomplishments, wherein like you're new, you don't know much, you learn to be a man, everybody throws the candy at you once you make aliyah, and now you've had your bar mitzvah, you're part of the club. And so it could be that like some of these people like Ted Cruz are just like 12 years old in Bitcoin years, and they're gonna hit their 13th year, and then we're all gonna congratulate them, throw some candy at them, and then the next guy's gonna come, and like that could be like the carnival ride, basically. Like that analogy might be what we're looking for. Although I don't know if it's too esoteric. I don't know if everybody knows the bar mitzvah traditions. Maybe that's why it doesn't work. I don't know. And the track would get longer every time. It could be that every time you get on Space Mountain, they like you go down the whole ride, and then the crew comes and add like an extra 3 feet of tracks, and then you go back on again, and then they have 3 feet of tracks. It could be that, and then eventually, yeah, you go to like Nirvana and you're there. I don't know.
Chris, what's your take? What's your projections here on sort of the future of Bitcoin, crypto, and politics? Like, if you had to look into the next 2 election cycles, and based on how things are maturing,
So
do some
I've
mental
maintained,
here. Where's the skull going?
Okay, so I've maintained. I don't know that I'm right about this. I don't care. This is what I suspect or think, and I'm going to go with it, even if it's low probability. You can all laugh at me for being wrong. I would like to be wrong. I've said for over a year now there will not be an election. That we're going to have to save democracy starting this November. I maintain. I'm going to stay by that, even if the chances are lower than when I first said it. Although I think that's a possibility. I think what's going to happen is we're going to elect not to vote because we're going to have to save democracy. That's what my guess is for this year. After that, I don't know. Like I I very much identified with like the conservative side of things for a long time, but I've completely fallen out with that. And I no longer see these parties as serving anybody at all. And so say it again.
They serve themselves. Their purpose is to maintain the authority to provision themselves and the people who are associated with them with resources.
Yeah, and you'll be told what you want to hear, so you check a box, and then you'll be summarily discarded. That'll be the pattern. So,
so you think there will be like some kind of crisis will be declared, and there won't be an election day. It'll be November 5th this year, I think. So you think like nothing will happen on November 5th. Something will happen before.
I think before what's going to happen, it's going to be like the pandemic. There'll be a broadcast on the state media, and it'll be syndicated, and you'll have a significant number of the population who see this as an opportunity for social advancement, and they will immediately begin to champion the message that we have to save democracy, and they will hold you in contempt for having not been on board of this.
I mean, that's a long shot one, because it's tough to get people to break with the status quo. People are conformists, so it's going to.
What does the Supreme Court going to do next week? That's the big question, because that will set that up.
I agree it's a long shot. I would like to be wrong, but I've said this now for long enough to have to stick with it, and I don't think it's a small chance. I think it's not the likely chance, but I think there's a chance.
Well, let's assume that doesn't happen. Let's assume that that small chance doesn't happen and things pursued in a fucked up manner, but a normal manner.
Okay. So that doesn't happen.
What is the future for crypto and politics, and what are the awkward teenage years for Bitcoin, basically like going mainstream as a global investment asset and look like?
So I think if that doesn't happen, it's going to look like Brexit. It's going to look like Brexit, where there's going to be, I think Joe Biden will win the presidency for various reasons we can get into, just a hunch, and he will represent nobody. He will just be like an island of like this very small group of people, and whenever they put something up to vote, like we're going to vote to just disrupt them. So it'll be like Brexit, I think, where like the politicians are like going to join the EU, and like maybe not enough people really want that, and then the people vote against it. But since nobody in power represented that coalition, it'll just be like weird and like half implemented. And so I think we're going to have a series of things like that, where like we'll have like transgender hockey leagues being like important for some reason, and everyone will vote against it, but there'll be nobody in power who can even know what it is to be against transgender hockey leagues. And so it'll just kind of like limp along like indeterminately, with like some players maybe or maybe not being transgender. Like these types of things, I think, would be my guess. And I would like to see that like the states actually just start divorcing themselves, basically. Like, not on paper, like we're 100% part of the United States, everything's great, we all believe everything you say, but also we have all these overriding rules that make it so that like whatever you say is basically not relevant. Just like Florida, like Texas has its own stock exchange. We agree in full with everything the SEC has to say. I'm very sorry, but the SEC has no jurisdiction here. Just sort of like that kind of a thing, where like the words and the actions don't have any pretense of lining up. that would be like kind of the general theme, would be my guess.
And with your language theme, the Texas could just say, this isn't a stock exchange. This is a
right,
whatever, a fruit factory or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's kind of, I mean, that's just in general what we're doing, like already. Just seems like it. Like, you know, like just like take like racism. Like that's an easy example. Racism like once was a thing that had like a very concrete value to everybody, but over time, like the connotation displaced the denotation, and now it seems like everything, because it's such a powerful word, like the word itself is powerful, like the word racism. What it means is irrelevant, completely irrelevant. All we know is that you don't want to be racist. So therefore, if I don't want people eating my like competitors' peanut butter, it's going to be racist peanut butter. And like that's what we're doing, you know. And you have like this group of people who haven't figured out that's the game we're playing, and because of that, like we're like held hostages to like their like faith basically in the words. Like that would be my, I don't know if this is like a great like telling of what's going to happen, but decohering like as a general theme, like I would see like as we go into a decentralized model, the institutional like regime will just decohere. It'll be effectively toothless. It'll be words without meaning. Like that's a good example.
Faith in the federal government, and they'll lose faith in some of the institutions, and then power will flow back to the states because somebody has to keep it all together. I mean, you don't want the livestock running all over the ranch, destroying everything. The ranchers have to say.
No, I think people just put their faith in more local governance. And so when like the IRS is coming for you, you'll notify like your state IRS protection squad, who will supersede the IRS agents and ensure that your money is properly accounted for. And lo and behold, in their determination, you don't owe the IRS as much money as they say, but what you do owe is half of that amount to like the Texas government. And so you'll pay Texas half the amount you owe the IRS, and then they'll protect you from the IRS, and everything will be above board. Like it'll be something retarded like that. And because it's in everybody's interest locally, and the federal government's like power is like weird, that's just the stasis that that would be my guess. I'm not like specializing in this stuff. It's just watching. Somebody asked me the other day, like, how do you make predictions? And it's like, you know what? I generally just look to see an object in motion, and then I assume it'll stay in motion. So like here, that's what I'm doing. If I see what the current trajectories are, and I assume they continue, this is the outcomes I would expect. You know, we'll see what happens. But
I mean, on the opposite end of that, you've got Bitcoin as an object in motion. It's obviously getting, you know, we've got these ETFs now. We have ETH even being approved for as an ETF. See what happens with the S1s. But the clear trajectory for this stuff is that more people will own these assets. More people will take these things seriously. And, you know, I kind of have a hard time seeing a world where the momentum from that, which is pretty fast, continues, and where we end up in a world where all the woke people just like change all of our language and, you know, do all of these things that basically like control our lives and have sort of the Orwellian outcome that you were describing.
It's not just the woke people that are.
But I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I
started changing the language, but I see the conservatives catching right up, like around there.
But in a way, don't you think like Donald Trump is a reaction to like politically correct speech?
Yeah,
so sure. That is kind of like but that's kind of like undoing a little bit of the language vagueness, where people are saying, no, I'll vote for Orange Hitler as long as he knows what this word means, you know.
Take like fake news.
Like
Fake news was something that at one point had a lot more like credibility than it does now. Granted, there's like nothing but fake news now, but also like fake news once was like the idea that there were like intentionally deceptive forces out there. Now fake news includes that group, but it also includes anybody who tells me anything I don't want to hear. Like, colloquially, at least, like the way I see people say it. Or like, what's another example? Like there are conservative analogs. The deep state is like similar. Like the deep state started off, I think, in one way. It is now basically included anytime anyone tells you something you don't want to hear that's like loosely affiliated with the bureaucracy, which I share. Like I actually think that's probably like the bureaucracies have grown too big. Like that, I share that sort of like apprehension. But I just think that they're like similar but different on the conservative side. But to Wayne's point, like the problem I have, I think, Wayne, is that like, okay, so this is a longer thing. I think I touched on this in the show towards the end of the show, but like much of what happens online is a simulacrum. Like this is just Baudrillard that I'm quoting roughly. And so like what you have with like crypto are a series of simulacrums. These, we can get into what that is, but we have like very much a case of the stock market simulacrum. It would appear to be stock displacing, or it would appear to be stock-like, and all mechanisms that can be perceived. But what it is not its appearance. And again, this gets back to like sort of like the performativity that's required. It may be that everybody in the entire space is performing the act of stocks, or performing the act of gold. So these simulacrums would appear to be increasing in their penetration, and they very well might be, but it doesn't mean that there's any traction. It could just be that more people are playing the act. And what that means is that like there will be no companies, there will be no currencies, there will only be this gigantic mirage that has lots and lots of adherents, but which is otherwise vacuous. Like if you get too close to it, it'll just disappear. It's not there. Like that flowery language, sure, broad stroke, sure, but that's kind of how I see the space. Like ultimately, what will happen is Iran or like Russia or China will just offer its own currency, and the Darknet will switch to it, and all the people who believed in the appearance will be left with these sort of less useful tokens, perhaps. Like that could transpire. I don't know.
Guys, I have to go. This is the super cool stuff. I look forward to listening to it.
Paul, just stay for this prediction of mine.
In the real world, I'm not in the simulacra. I'm really at the conference, so
Paul,
I better really go there.
Just stay for 30 seconds,
All right,
because
one more thing. Yes.
I want to make a prediction about U.S. politics. I don't care what's going to happen this year, but in the next election cycle, I think we're going to see David Bailey, the owner of Bitcoin Magazine, run for president. And I'm not even joking.
Just as a publicity, really, or a publicity stunt?
No, I think it's going to happen for real, because he's so well connected.
I'd
You
vote
can
for
see
him.
a pattern here that he invited all of these high-profile politicians to speak on the stage.
But that has also been a trend, though, because we had first Bitcoin conference, there was like Senator Lummis or someone, there was like a few people, and then we've gotten more and more and more. And so that is also the trend of attracting politicians.
I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan gets ran for office at some point, too.
So let me predict this.
See you guys.
You're going to have a bill. You're going to have, I don't know if it's going to be the Republican Party or independents or whatever, libertarians. You're going to have David Bailey, and his running mate is going to be Ryan Selkis of Masari. That's my prediction. You can record this. Come back to me in 4 years.
Chris DeRose will be the Secretary of State. John Seth will be staff.
I like it. I think also too, in a lot of this, we're finding out these officials probably don't have as much power as we think. Excuse me. I think about some of like the campaign promises that we've heard over the last 15 years, and I don't know that many of them have come to bear. Anyone can be the judge of that. The healthcare system in America sucks. If you go to like Colombia, just to try it out, I'm not saying it's the best healthcare system, but it will show you how inefficient ours is. Thailand's the same way. Go to get some kind of healthcare in Thailand. You'd be amazed at how efficient it is. So like that was an Obama era like promise. You can decide if that came true or not. Like maybe it did. I don't know. But I take my healthcare needs outside the United States now. Not that there's many. You look at the Biden student loan stuff. Like maybe that's like a promise that he'll make. It's a little weird to me whether or not that's the case. I don't know. It looks like it is. Trump made some promises that didn't quite come through. Weirdly, I think I saw in the news like Assange is like striking a plea deal now, which I thought that was a Trump era promise. Not promise. I don't remember that was. Not him. It was. So like I saw Donald Trump promising or suggesting that he would let Ross Ulbright go. Like I have no reason to believe that, even if he said it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. Maybe he does, but I don't really have any faith that it's going to happen. I think he's going to say whatever he needs to say to get elected, and then he may even try to do that. And then someone's going to show up and tell him no, and he's going to say, okay. That's what I suspect happens.
Well, I think the narrative for Ross right now is stronger. He has been in jail for a decade, and everyone can agree reasonably that if you weighed in his crime, it's excessive. So they can maybe not declare him not guilty or whatever. He needs to get clemency, right? Which is a presidential decision. It can only come from the head of state, according to how the legal system was designed. He has no right to appeal. All he can get at best is this clemency. And I think that right now the narrative is stronger for Ross than it was 4 years ago or any other time. It's just that the campaigning is more efficient, and Trump seems desperate enough to just accept any alliance that comes his way. There are rumors that he's going to be speaking at the Bitcoin 2024 conference. I don't know if they're going to be true or if we're going to see. It's going to be interesting if he joins, because there's already Robert Kennedy who's going to be part of the speakers list. So if that turns out to be basically the largest stage for political candidates to express their opinions on Bitcoin matters, I think it's just confirmation that you guys were super right to join so early on. I was super wrong to join later, because I did discover Bitcoin pretty early on, but I thought it was a stupid idea. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know that that's what it says. Like it might say that. It is comforting to hear. I think it says more about how far behind our leaders are, to me. There's many cases where all of us knew what was going to happen before it happened, and somehow our leadership did not. So like take the border thing. Like anybody who is like a 3-digit IQ or higher, I guess not higher, a 3-digit IQ, could have told you that if we don't enforce some standards at the border, we're going to end up with rampant crime, coming across the border, and somehow that message wasn't heard. Now I don't actually know what to tell you the story is on that, because it seems to be like opening the border seemed to be some kind of like political agenda and bad faith mixed with like the allegation that these are bringing in more like blue voters, and also some kind of spite, like Orange Man says it's good, therefore it's bad. Fine. But like in general, I can't help but to watch, like I can't watch like regular mainstream TV anymore. Like I play some video games there. Like that's basically it, and maybe some YouTube sometimes.
So
but,
what games do you play, Chris?
Okay, anything but from From Software. Those Souls games are amazing. So I haven't played Elden Ring, but I've played every other one of those games and beat it. And then I'm playing Grand Theft Auto 5 now, just because I had sitting there, I put it in, and like it's pretty great actually. So that's something I do. But anyways, if I watch like a daytime TV show every once in a while, I cannot relate. It is like watching it like something, I don't know, from another planet. Mostly that's me, but I think that speaks to the kind of like mentality that the leadership is probably forced to accommodate. And I don't know. There's a lot of people out there that are functionally identical to slaves, like not exactly in the way that their life quality is, but like in their attitudes towards like freedom and sovereignty, and like they just go on TV and they download the thing to believe. It's the right thing to believe, and then okay, master, I believe it, and then that's that. It's why I say I think this election will have to save democracy. Like it sounds crazy, but what'll happen is this TV will say to people what the right thing is, and they'll just go. They're like, okay, I accept orders, and they'll go around and just repeat them, and it'll be a critical mass. And critical mass doesn't even take much. All you need is like 20% or less, even like 10% of the population, to be like steadfast about something. And if the other 90% is just like ambivalent, like they'll take over. So yeah, that's maybe one of the forces we're dealing with. I don't know. You see that with Bitcoin. There's a small number that will appear that will just coerce a huge crowd. of like like otherwise stationary objects, like people who just sit and wait for orders, from basically a prestigious source. Like prestige is like how the whole system seems to like perpetuate. If someone's prestigious, like they're quote unquote right, and I can live like Paul kind of touched on. I can live with safety by repeating whatever they say. Like consideration be damned. When you have that kind
don't
of
have any Bitcoin in your future. So do you think Bitcoin failed completely, and when did it happen? Because you don't really talk about it when you
fail. It didn't fail. I mean, like you can't look at the price and tell me it failed. But what I think it did do is perform success, which I know sounds like dicing hairs, but it performs like a successful asset would perform. Like it's hard to take that away from it. However, if we look at things like adoption, if we look at things like non-speculative use, if we look at things that are otherwise obscured in the numbers, it hasn't been very impressive.
Well, let me push back.
Roger,
Let me push back on that for a second, because if you look at a lot of metrics, even like on-chain metrics, like number of addresses and things like that, it's all up and to the right. There's been no decline. If you look at least from my own perspective, my expectations of how Bitcoin would be adopted have not really been violated. I didn't think there was going to be a bunch of darknet markets and people, overthrowing governments and things like that. It's pretty much gone according to the way that I expected, with the exception that I didn't think that the Democrats would be so openly hostile towards things so quickly. I thought it would still stay under the radar for a period of time. And when I look at things like, people aren't spending Bitcoin to buy coffee or tamales or whatever. But I've always looked at Bitcoin more as like a reserve asset that a new financial system was going to be built on top of, rather than like a day-to-day usage of cash. So when I look at things, I don't ever get the sense that Bitcoin really has failed in any way. We've met some serious obstacles.
The way you defined it is failure to many. The way you're defining success is failure to many.
Well, that's what's cool about the world, is that people have different ideas about what success is and everything. Like I don't look at, I'm just saying that things have gone along with my expectations, more or less, for the past.
Okay, when was the last time you bought
I
something?
never think that Bitcoin is a failure.
When was the last time you bought something in Bitcoin?
Never.
Granted, that metric may not be a good metric.
I have never bought anything with Bitcoin.
What?
Okay. So I
I've
would say that
people internationally, I guess I've purchased labor with Bitcoin on occasion over the years for software developers. Other than that, I have never actually, and I've never wanted to spend Bitcoin to buy an object. I bought a house.
when have you used Bitcoin for something besides speculation?
I used it in the business. I used it to pay people internationally, but
You did use it for payment. There you go. See, that's something.
yeah. That's what I said. I purchased labor international. Basically people want to say, oh, you hire somebody to build you a script or something like that. They want payment in Bitcoin. So, long time ago, I sent that. But I've never purchased anything in Bitcoin. I've never thought of, I should really buy this stuff with Bitcoin. I've never even thought of Bitcoin as something that should be money sitting in my pocket that I can spend just like the cash I might have in my pocket.
Okay. That sounds like some revisionism. I'm not positive. I don't care to prove you're right or wrong. But my suspicion is that when you first came here, you didn't feel so resolutely as if the purchasing of goods and services was irrelevant.
You're right. So a long time ago, maybe in like 2012, 2013, I was like, oh yeah, sure. If you want to buy something with Bitcoin, go ahead and buy something with Bitcoin. But I was always sort of waiting for like the next thing to come along, not the next Bitcoin, but the next thing that would make it more practical, like a really good wallet to use, or a really easy service that made it easy. Because I always found that if you wanted to try to buy something in Bitcoin, it was kind of a pain in the ass. And then once things like, the IRS in 2014 said you have to treat Bitcoin for property for tax purposes, they sort of clarified that. So now you have to calculate capital gains on all your purchases. There's been all of this other stuff with the world, the banks, the governments of the world have worked hard to make it so that Bitcoin adoption is slowed and buying things with Bitcoin is cumbersome. And I was like, okay, well, from my mind, that early thought that, okay, I can use Bitcoin to buy stuff like, graphics cards from Roger Ver or something like that. That's on hold until these other issues get resolved. And that's really how I've kind of thought about things. Even when I started Tyrion, I purposefully picked something that didn't involve a financial application of Bitcoin because I just didn't want to get caught up in all that stuff. I wanted to do something that was useful where I could establish a foothold that didn't have to deal with all the regulatory and the banking mess and everything that I saw all of my peers going through.
When you say Bitcoin, do you mean crypto like USDT, Overtron? Is that Bitcoin?
No, that's something different. So I'm just talking about Bitcoin right now. Stable coins, I think stable coins are great. It allows people to get access to the US dollars internationally.
They're bonds. They're bonds. They're not stable coin. That's a perfect example of the simulacrum at work. They would appear to be a type of currency when in some greater
it's a fraction of a bond portfolio. You're right. You're 100% right. It's a fraction of a bond portfolio.
So that's the thing. I don't think I'm right. I know that this sounds like you're going like I'm being impossible. I am, but I don't think I'm right. I think what's right is that you call them stable coins. I think what's true is that they're bonds. That splitting hemispherically of these separate pursuits.
Yeah. Dollar coin.
Why we have this
term, but we suffer from very bad vocabulary in our sphere.
Well, it's not like that. It's like there are a lot of reasons to talk, no doubt, but there seems to be a huge coalition that talks in the interest of propriety or in establishing some like ethical guidelines. There are other people who want to discover maybe the parts of something that won't change the truth of the matter. And those two sides don't meet anymore. So what I generally try to do is just like embrace being wrong. And I would choose to join the Pursuit of Truth Squad, which is just like a small group. And what that means is that I'm wrong. Like what you'll get, Vlad, is a lot of people telling me how stupid I am. And they're right. They're 100% right. But they assume that I'm trying to say the right thing. I'm not trying to say the right thing. I'm trying to say what's evident to me, which is that stable coins are bots. And so I would always get outnumbered by those people because there's so many reasons why they're going to be a greater coalition. Yeah.
Jay, I'm curious, Jay, you seem to have expressed before that you had some sentiment that Bitcoin has failed in some aspects. Like, can you elaborate on your feelings?
Okay. I would say that maybe like a little ahead of the crowd, but I think, and I want to spin this in a positive way. I think it's a new chance to restart. I believe that if you look at 2008, if you look at Wall Street integrated into crypto, how we're talking about bringing Donald Trump instead of some developer to the conferences, I feel like it's just mainstream. It's just TradFi, and we need a new Bitcoin movement. We need a new movement to create something out of this. And why has it failed? Namely because of USDT Overtron. The fact that is, the underground in Iran chooses to use that instead of Bitcoin. It's, how did we get there? We got there. We got there because of technical reasons and mistakes and failures that we didn't scale. So what is scaling Bitcoin? Crypto scaling Bitcoin, and now we have thousands of tokens, and who stole the money? Wall Street, and it's kind of a mess. And I don't know if you heard of OpsCTV, Chris, but that was the pinnacle. Like at that moment, when OpsCTV failed, it was obvious that everything that we did in 2013 and 2014 with evolving around developers and at some point you just got to go pure science, put everything else away, just get the experts together and agree and that's how we can move forward. When that failed, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of lonely to be ahead of the game, but I thought it was over at that point, and now it looks like it is, but it's not over. It's a new beginning. We'll see what happens from here. And I think what Vlad's doing is exactly what we need. I would love to forget the past and move forward, but I guess one last look at the past is worth it. But I think there is some hope. We're just waiting for everyone to realize that what we had is kind of we kind of screwed up. I'm not in a negative way, reality. And now we just got to find out what's next.
I like what I'm hearing about Luke's plan. That sounds like Luke. I really like Luke. He don't like me at all. I still
like
really like and respect the man. Yeah, I really like Luke. And there's been a lot of times when he said something, I was like, I don't know about that. And then it was just like, oh, I came around his point of view. So I don't know what the details are, but like, I like what he's doing. So from little I've heard, I'm gonna look into this some more.
He's basically sort of applied his puritanical views towards Catholicism to his career, where he's like,
when you say you like it, what do you mean by you like it? You like the chaos?
I have hope in the outcome. I believe the potential there is non-trivial. Like it is a path towards success. Now, I'm not Catholic. I've read a lot of religious books over the years, which is freaking weird, but that's not what I set out to do. I've read a few Orthodox Christianity books. I don't believe any of that, but I do see that others will, and it's very likely that he will attract a crowd of like bloodthirsty, zealous maniacs. And those people are probably more likely to either gin up outrage or otherwise coerce the greater whole as a result, if I had to guess.
It's interesting at Satoshi Roundtable this year. There was Luke was there, and there was a meeting by a jacuzzi with a bunch of miners. We were all sitting around talking, and I think the general consensus, like if you were just to zoom out and not say anything like really specific about this conversation to betray anyone's confidence, I think Luke was like, I'm right and I'm going to do what's right, and the other people were looking at him. The other mining pools were like, you're crazy and you're going to go out of business. And that was over time we'll find out who's right.
He'll probably start a new blockchain. He'll probably start Jesus chain. Wouldn't surprise me. And then we'll be in the awkward position of like, this is like it's like the variant of like the dark coin problem, where like you bet the dark coin won't work, and then it comes back as Dash coin, and now who's right? I don't know anymore. I could see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to consider like the one of the reasons why we have such craziness is that like I think we have the leaders just respond to outrage, best I can tell. So if you get more outrage than the next guy, you're going to push you're going to push the line forward. And so now you got to start thinking, for better or worse, if you're then I don't want to pursue this path, but for anybody who does, how are you going to create like the most like ravenous crowd of people? And we've seen this happen over and over again where these people get their way, or at least they torment the rest of us for some period of time before like enough people get around to being like, okay, we got to do something about these crazies. So if that's either where Luke is going intentionally or otherwise, like not the worst plan, especially if he's bringing like religion in, because that speaks to like a much more denominational need than some of the other stuff that we've seen create these crazies.
Chris, I gotta ask you some questions from the audience. There's a bunch of them, and I don't even know where to start. But okay. I'm gonna take them in chronological order. So some of them are from the chat. On YouTube, there's Random Life of Brian, who asks, when AI uncensored?
Needed. That's an opportunity if someone wants to take it. My time behind I like very much like years behind the microphone doing stuff. I don't see myself doing it again for a lot of reasons, but that's a great question. You're going to have a repeat in many ways of the blockchain everything with AI for sure, and AI is going to stop meaning anything. Again, anyone who's watching this, if you want to just accelerate the trend, you should just start displacing the word good with AI in your vocabulary, like on Twitter or elsewhere. Anytime you would have used the word good, just say AI instead. It'll probably take off in short time, and that'll help, probably. It'll be fun if nothing else.
There's also Martin Hangelstrom I hope I pronounced that correctly. He said Roger's
Martin.
interview at Bitcoin Miami toilet was probably his best one.
Oh, that was a great interview. I like Roger. I don't care what anybody says. Like, that guy came in, put his time in when it was hard. You know, he clearly fell out of the grace of the community. But like, I look at it from his perspective as best I can, and like, he didn't have to do shit. He could have just walked away. Fuck y'all. I'm taking my money for me. And instead, he tried to benefit the crowd in ways that I think were very well intentioned. And like, it's not over. Like, Roger may just be 100% right, and we don't know it yet. That could be. Let's see.
I like Roger too. I wish he would have never left, because I think we would have done a lot better in Bitcoin Core. And it turns out, I learned that he didn't. I learned that somebody else forked it, and he just went along with it. So.
Culturally, he came from like a different time. Like the libertarian culture coming off like the Tea Party movement was a big part of the early scene. Like, it wasn't the earliest part, but it was a big part of, like, I don't know, maybe 2010 or so, like 2011, something like that. He was from that era, and that era ended, and he went with it. And that was a shame, I guess. I don't know if that's the way to tell the story, but it seems that like a way to me.
There's also Vic in the chat who started to make a list of memorable moments from Bitcoin Uncensored, and he says the Disney Dragon Chain interview, crashing the OneCoin seminar, Brock the Backpage driver, Billy the gay escort, and too many classic moments.
Thank you, Vic. Yeah, watching OneCoin in the news has been kind of cool too. I saw a documentary over Ruja. That was a fun chapter.
Talking about OneCoin, what do you think of Hex? Have you followed?
Oh man, so Richard and I had like odd paths that like unknown to him and only known to me now. We were very close to each other, living in South Florida in various ways. And I gotta say, watching some of his later stuff now, like I can't, how to put it. It's a little sad to me. I don't know. I've gotten out of a lot of the materialism in my life. Like, this is really something that I've struggled with, like all of us. But like in recent years, like it's done. Like I stay away from logos. I hate logos as a general rule. I don't like signs. I removed like all my shirts are solid color. I try to wear like hats, nothing. I don't want any logos or signs. My possessions are minimal. I mostly live out of a backpack. I have like, real estate and like, some minor stuff here and there, but nothing that I couldn't, if I lost everything tomorrow, like I could just buy it all back in like a day and a half. Maybe not the real estate, but like otherwise material goods. And so I look at like Richard Hart, like he's the opposite. He has sacrificed his freedom, or soon find out that he sacrificed his freedom for these objects that I don't understand what, like my guess is that he was, okay, a lot of these objects are like coded as best I can tell. Like you think you're buying a watch, but you're not buying a watch. What you're buying is the respect of some group of people, or maybe what you're buying is like the perception of power amongst like the people around you. Like, it's not really about the watch for most people. There's certainly some exceptions. So like, I'm guessing Richard was trying to buy respect. I'm guessing he was trying to buy girls. I'm guessing he was trying to buy some of these things. It may be that like these possessions of his are in themselves the end that justifies the means for him. I don't know, but it's a little sad to me because like it's not worth it. Like, he's going to go through this whole thing. He's going to get pinched at some point, and he'll probably, I can see him committing suicide in jail kind of guy. And it was like, you did all that for like a brand stamped like shirt, like a holy logo, basically. Like, you're in like this sort of either this prestigious or this revered like class of people, seemingly by appearance.
Do you think he's one of the smartest people in the space ever?
Yeah, I think he's one of the smartest people.
One. Yeah, I think. Amazing.
Yeah, he's not an idiot. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy, and it's really sad to me because like he has the potential to have done things that I think would have been more impressive. I don't know. Like, it's just an odd case to me. Like, I don't know what the motivation is that isn't sad, I guess. That's the thing.
He found a really good flaw in the AMM system and pretty brilliant thing he ran. It lasted a long time. I could just
Yeah, but when I look at it,
Kenny.
I look at why he did it. Like if you just like hoarded the money, I don't know. For me, that would be like, okay, well, he's just trying to be like a shrewd businessman. But I don't think that's what it is. He was like very ostentatious on top of it. He like was happy to showcase like the heist, the loot from the heist. And like I can't help but think that that's like the goal is for him to like buy respect or something. I guess. I want to be nice to the guy. Like I'm not trying to knock on him. Actually, I feel bad for him. I do. And it's a little sad to me. So I don't want it to be like, I don't want it to be framed in a way that like I'm jelly or something. I'm just not. I wish him the best. I wish he made decisions that were more suiting of his potential. I think he could have been a more valuable human being, maybe even. These are just petty scams. Like they're not really that clever to me. Like he did him well. He gets great points on execution. Absolutely.
I think he's better than Charles Ponzi. I think he's actually better than Charles Ponzi. I think he's probably the best.
Yeah, his execution is top notch. I'm with you. But I would but like the idea itself, I didn't think was that like the idea is not so much. Like execution, 5 stars. But it's not like an Ocean's 11 heist he planned. It's just like a run-of-the-mill Ponzi scheme. So
No, but the way he keeps the price up, there's a whole thing that Jump's doing that.
Oh, I know. I heard it.
Yeah. But anyway.
I don't find that part as interesting. Although it's interesting to me that he can sell that. Less that he can think that. Like thinking of that was not the challenging part. Selling that was absolutely deserving of admiration. He sold something I did not think most people would ever be convinced to buy, and he did a good job of packaging.
Pumponomics, right? Pumponomics.
Yeah, he also does
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals.
Yeah. There's this weirdness of irony in our times that he's figured out, where like you can through irony, like we did it to BU, he also did it. Like through irony, you get this odd form of permission to break the rules. So great, good. That's clever. He gets points for that.
Sounds like the meme coins.
I've seen some crazy meme coins out there. I saw one, it was like Supersonic 3000 Hyper Beta coin. And it's just, you had to, now I got to find it maybe, but it was very underground. I don't know who started it. It was just the craziest marketing, promotions, over the top thing. And I got to see if I can find that maybe. I don't even think anybody would have known it. I would have made a big deal about it on the show just because it was so over the top in its execution. Like every possible trope of Bitcoin weird was pulled out. It was actually very, very well done in that sense.
Chris, I know you're a little younger than I am, but I still think you might be old enough to remember commemorative plate commercials in the 1980s on TV. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
That's the way I think of meme coins and NFTs. It's like the modern day version of commemorative plates. Okay, so I found a very good analogy. In that vein, I would submit to anybody, don't invest in this, but Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10 Inu coin.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this, if everyone's seen it or not, I don't know. The marketing on that was hilarious.
No.
Absolutely hilarious.
I had a lot of fun making Wayne Chain back in 2016, but that was pretty much, I kind of hit my zenith like really early, and I couldn't do anything better than that. So I think I just kind of sit on that for a while. I'm not into
it's ironic. Yeah, I mean, I have a neighbor that is over this way who put, I want to say $50,000. He can't afford this. He's like a blue collar guy, and he put I think $50,000 into some meme coin, and he told me that his friend is like an industry guy. He knows all about this meme, all about blockchain, and this is the one that's gonna make him a bajillionaire. And years gone by, he's lost all the money, and that was like a major financial impact on his future. I feel bad, but like nothing you could have done about it. He was gone. Couldn't reach him.
Did you follow anything that the situation with Martin Skrelli and Barron Trump and the Trump coin?
I was tangentially aware of it, but I didn't follow it too much.
We shouldn't talk about it, but it was just such a shit show. Martin went on I think it was an 8 hours Twitter Spaces that I listened to a fair portion of while I was just doing yard work, and it was just a total mess. And then he had multiple spaces in the subsequent days where he was just talking about his interactions with Barron Trump and like getting all this. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is the craziest. How the fuck did I get involved in this? Like, how did I get into this universe where this kind of crazy stuff could happen and then almost start to feel normal? It's bizarre.
Wait, you gotta reckon that is probably normal. For a lot of the berating that we all got in earlier days, everybody came around to like where we were at. If not everybody, at least a large percent of the population. To the degree that you now have like the president of the United States like launching coins or like people in his proximity, you know, the 4chanification of life is like evident to me. People don't see it this way. I have a number of friends now that are clearly like completely never heard of 4chan, sharing memes and ideas that I have seen coming out of 4chan or I know came out of 4chan or certainly is like same types of people there. And these are like normies in my everyday life. And it's a little awkward now because like I was chastised for probably like being even proximate to these ideas. And now I'm watching as it's taking over everything around me at least. And I don't know what to do anymore because like I feel like I know where they're going to end up, and they're not going to be as successful as maybe as I was because they're late to the party, and I'm not even sure that I was successful in a lot of ways, just entertaining. I made money and I was entertaining. So for most people's measure that's success, but I question sometimes whether that's success. Sometimes I think we misplace our aspirations. Like I don't regret any of it. Don't get me wrong. The last laugh hasn't been had yet. We'll see who that is.
Vlad, you got more audience questions?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them. There is a comment by Random Life of Brian who says cowboy hats at the first Satoshi Roundtable and Club Med. I don't know what Club Med stands for, but I guess it's a reference.
Cowboy hat, a full cowboy hat at Club Med in like central North Florida. Melbourne maybe. Yeah, that was fun. Those were fun days.
Paul got so drunk, you guys interviewed him, and he was like literally, he was like swallowing the microphone and spilling his drink all over himself. I wish he was still on the call.
Cool.
Bust his chops about that one.
Jack Kensick says, how did the angel investment in Nextdoor go, Chris? Any opinions on robotics?
Yeah. Okay, so I lost some money on the Nextdoor deal. I was up and then I was down. Nothing much. I forgot what I have to look at the final numbers. So that was a bust. That was a bust. But I have to say some of my opinions on like going public have really changed increasingly. It's more evident to me now that when things go public, like you really just got to sell. I held on. I should have. If I sold it when the IPO was, that's really the only time I should have sold. But I like the company. I was like, they're sitting on a lot of potential here. I think they just got to monetize the product. That's not what's going on, so be it. But generally, when it comes to public now, that's when they turn to shit. Like Airbnb really went downhill when they went public. We have like a local pizza place that like Anthony's Pizza is fantastic. They went public, they turned to shit. It's a very common pattern seemingly around me now that when you go to public, it's like party's over. You're just like monetizing the sign, and you're just eviscerating it of any quality for whatever faith is left in it. Like that's what it looks like to me.
How else are you gonna get exit liquidity? There's no, maybe tokenization.
Some of this I think is actually like the Federal Reserve's like monetary policy that's like incentivizing more like a high time preference returns. I don't know if that's what we're seeing. On the matter of robotics, like I'm wishing to see some great investment opportunity there. I haven't, though I think it's a very promising space. These robot dogs are looking pretty cool, that's for sure. I like some of the footage I've been seeing there. Whether or not they'll replace our police force or not, I don't know. But that's another thing with the robots. Like, that's the kind of thing that's going to be so extremely successful as to make me wonder if you don't lose by winning. Like sometimes, like the robots really take off, like the stock market doesn't make sense anymore, almost kind of thing. Let's see. What do you do when like most of human labor has been automated? Like I don't know.
It's like a video game where like you have infinite life and infinite money and all the items, and like once you kind of get to the end of it, it's like, oh well, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. I watched a lot of the robot stuff. I really like the robots.
Also, Jack wants to know, what do you think Florida will look like in 10 years? Do territories like Puerto Rico and Saipan have a future?
I can't say about the other territories. With Florida, the trajectory for Florida has been like up and to the right for pretty much all of my life. Property values are going up. The locals who were born here, there's a sort of pattern where they just move north. That has accelerated in recent years. A lot of the people that I grew up with have now moved to northern Florida or other parts of the country. Meanwhile, like my little area here is heavily invested. Like the amount of investment here is every year seems to be growing. And my rental receipts have been growing by and large. I do think there is a little bit of truth to some of the climate concerns. Like when it rains badly here on this island, like you can't flush the toilets. And nobody talks about that, which is very funny to me.
I know
I know we all have this problem because I have multiple properties here, and they have one of them has a brand new sewer system, and on all of those properties, when the rain gets too high, the toilets won't flush because the water level isn't like lower. The water pressure isn't lower on the sewage.
Wait
so
a second.
what actually happens?
Okay, go ahead. What happens when you flush the toilet? That's what I was going to ask.
The water level goes up. The water level goes up, and so then yeah, exactly. So then you kind of like not hit the button more than once because then it'll overflow. And nobody talks about it. I know all of my neighbors have this problem. But none of us have ever discussed it even once, which I find very, very funny. So that's like a concern with Florida. And like some of the stuff in Miami that I've seen is like odd, like concerning. Like some of the water level, like you look online for some of these videos where like the water level was not this high when I was a kid. I know that. No. I'm certain of that. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means we need new products like toilet, like super flushers, like a turbocharger you put in your toilet that like pressurizes the outpour into the sewer system and that fixes your problem. Or if we need to like put our toilets on a second floor and everyone needs to like just build a second floor on the toilet room so that they can climb up the stairs and use the bathroom, if that's going to solve the problem. But these sorts of things are going to become an issue in Florida. So I don't know what insurance is a big problem here. In fact, mortgages are getting weird for a lot of reasons. And if you can't afford to buy a house outright, you're going to have a real bad time here. In part because of the insurance requirements, which that has less to do with like climate concerns and more to do with the regular, legal concerns. What I understand, like the cost of construction are higher and the cost of litigation is higher, and the juries are sympathetic to claimants. So for that reason, we're all losing our insurance. Like I only have half my properties insured right now because the other ones are just it's too expensive, and I can just save the money, assume that I won't lose my house in 5 years, and then I'll end up on top and be able to buy a new place, kind of thing. So I did like a 50-50 coverage basically on my places.
I'm gonna have to head out in a little bit. I'm honored to be part of this reunion. It's
Wait, Jay, it's your birthday.
It is my
Is it your
birthday.
I was saving this for
Your
last,
birthday.
but
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
wait. It's my birthday. Guess how
Happy
I'll
birthday.
I just wanted everyone to wish you a happy birthday and all the best, because I was saving this for last. Maybe we're going to sing happy birthday for you, but now you want to
Thank
head
God.
out.
Spend your birthday with us, Jay.
Listen, it's an honor. It was like I wish you could bring some of that energy back for what we had back in the day. It was great times, and we'll see you around. Pleasure to be here. Thank you guys.
Bye, Jay. Good seeing you.
Yeah, I would say Florida's situated well politically and otherwise. Even if the elements are out to get us here, I think the Floridians are going to figure stuff out, be it two-story bathrooms or otherwise, to deal with it. And I think what's probably going to happen is you're going to see a lot of like New Yorkers here. I already am seeing that. Like New York will just kind of like start moving over here. It's already started, and this will become like a finance and or retirement like capital of the country.
Chris, can you elaborate on like what's happened in Miami the past couple of years since COVID? It seemed like a lot of people moved there A lot of podcasters started making content out of Miami. You know, you're starting to see a lot of that culture being at least exported to the rest of the world, and a lot of people are talking about how Miami changes. But you know, I've only been there a handful of times since 2020.
So I really mostly hang out outside the country now. Most of my time is spent in Latin America, but I do go through Miami. And what you just said, I totally noticed. The Miami downtown area in particular, maybe really like, yeah, the downtown area in particular, seems to have a large influx of people. The financial district has a lot more banks moving in. I think it's just like politically, the climate was better for everybody here, and or at least for a lot of people, and they all moved in. You had shutdowns that made it impossible to live in some of these other cities, and Florida was immune to that. So I don't know what else there's to be said about that exactly. The culture has clearly changed in a number of ways. I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I guess I could say we have a lot more Jews here than I remember. We always had a lot of Jews here. So that's one way that the culture's changed. A lot of the Jewish community from New York seems to be coming down here. I've noticed that communities when I was a kid that were not Jewish are now super Orthodox, like very, very Orthodox, which I kind of like, but it's just odd to see. I wonder if there aren't a lot more of those New Yorkers coming down. But in general, I've seen a lot of New Yorkers come and Northeasterners come in. And the Latins that are here don't seem too impacted from what I can tell. I'm not really with those communities. I've seen more Brazilians come in over the years, although that didn't happen in 2020. That's just been happening steadily. And some of that's my area, like Pompano Beach area has like a Brazilian community. Little Haiti seems to be losing its patience. And I think that's most of it. You've got I do think you have a lot more blue Americans coming into Miami, and the red Americans are leaving. There's a saying around here roughly that if you're on the first floor, you're red, and if you're on any other floor, you're blue. And I do think that's the case in Miami. So you have, as best I can tell, an interesting political environment where you have these people that are new. They're new to Bitcoin. They're here to fix it. And you have the Latins, which in many cases are the conservatives in Miami, which is weird because it's not how you imagine it if you watch TV. And like Enrique Tarrio from the Proud Boys, he's a lot of Latin guys are like that here. I like him. And meanwhile, you have these yuppie types from New York coming in that are conflicting with those guys for a little bit. So I guess that's what I see. That's as much as I've seen. I'm maybe not the best person to ask because I'm out of the country a lot, but I've seen that.
There's another good question in the chat, also from Jack, but this is his last one because he seems like he is monopolizing the conversation. But he's asking for book recommendations.
Oh, well, that's the rest of our time here. I don't know what your reading level is. I spend a lot of time. I don't really like talking about what I read. I read a lot of religion and philosophy these days. What are some good books that I could recommend? One of the most life-changing books I've read in recent years was Anti-Oedipus. That was major. That completely changed my thinking. That was a very, very hard book to read. It took me 6 months, and I read it with a strategy guide, and I don't think I understood it. And it also changed my life. That was I highly recommend that. Deleuze and Guattari are amazing. I think they have a lot of potential there. What else? That's a very serious book though. You really gotta want that, and it'll challenge your life. What was another? Let's see. What are recently that I could recommend? I think Ivan Ilyin books are a big problem. They're fantastic. That's on the opposite end of Anti-Oedipus. He is a very interesting Orthodox Catholic guy. And I don't like religion, but I got sucked into some of these religion books, and he's another one. So on Resistance to Evil by Force, the signal to noise ratio is a little low on that one, but it's a really good book, I think, if you want to understand some of the tidal forces around you as maybe, I don't know if you're into that kind of stuff. So then I would also say On the computer side of things, I've been really getting into Haskell. I keep this around. I read this a while back. It's at least for reference.
Chris,
This
can
is a
you
pretty good book.
rejoin the call, somehow refresh the page, because your video is stuck, and if you're going to show the book, it's probably a good idea to do something to your connection. He's gonna be back.
Okay. Is my video less stuck?
You
Looks
have no
good.
video right now.
I can see him.
I
You can see me?
can't. It's probably from my side for some reason.
Okay. So Wayne sees me. I say we assume that I'm good and that it's on your end. But you may be broadcasting on OBS without me. I don't know if that matters.
Anyway, what's the book about, Haskell?
Oh, I mean, if you're a coder, like I'm really into Haskell right now. If you're a coder, I don't know if it's useful for anything. I'm still trying to figure that out. The syntax is alluring, and the problems are a little bit different. Like I want to nerd out. Like the concept of the monad doesn't really exist in other languages, and it lets you defer a lot of optimization to the compiler that you could never do. So that's been like a book that I would recommend if you're a programmer. I'm trying to think of less. I read esoteric stuff. I'm trying to think of something less esoteric that I've read.
I got a good one.
Oh, tell me.
I've repeatedly thought that throughout the history of Bitcoin, watching all these political battles and everybody fighting all the time, that A Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell has always been a good book that I come back to. And just like, if more people read this book and understand what he was saying, there would spend less time talking past each other.
I've not read that book. I'm aware of that book. That sounds like a great recommendation, Wayne.
Yeah, it's
I
everybody listening. It's
agree
just
on that one.
it's the ideological origins of how people are sort of have different visions of the world and political differences. It's like, if you know somebody is conservative or liberal, you can usually predict a bunch of other characteristics about them with a reasonable high degree of accuracy. Why is that? And it comes down to people having different visions, conflicting visions about things as basic as like what knowledge is. Like we actually talked on this earlier in the conversation. Some people look at knowledge as what the really smart elites know, and other people look at knowledge like what is the location of every bluefin tuna over 80 pounds in the Pacific Ocean. Like these are different types of information, and some people put a higher value on the location of the bluefin tuna, which is a huge impact on people's commercial viability of a fishing enterprise and ability to feed a nation, whereas other people would say that the answer to questions like what is the meaning of life or deep philosophic questions are like a higher level of knowledge. So he goes into these dichotomies across a whole broad set of different subject matters. So it's a good book, and actually there's a YouTube video too where he was on oh God, what's that show? Uncommon Knowledge. And he talked about it. So if anybody's interested in that, I thought that was a good book.
The problem I have with a lot of these beautiful libertarian-esque, but like classical economic theory books, is that much of it does assume a good faith regulatory environment and a good faith community. And I don't think we have that, nor do I think that's rewarded. I don't want to, everything you said, like I haven't read the book. I don't know anything about it. I'd like to know something about it. I like to read it actually. But I
Very
also find myself saying,
it's very practical.
that's what I would say. You say it's very practical, but my concern is that you take these like practical morals, lessons, themes, and then you go to like the fermenting like crazies, and it's just doesn't help you. That's the concern I have with some of this stuff.
If you want to pursue truth in the world and have like, build a model in your head of the world as it really is, it's oftentimes important to empathize with other people, understand where they're coming from. And if you can have a better rational basis for where they're coming from, other than they're just fucking crazy and I disagree with them, that's useful. And I found that book and some of the ideas in that book to make me have a better sense of empathy and also recognize why I might feel the way I feel about some things myself, but other people who feel very differently have a perfectly rational and reasonable set of reasons for feeling that way, and it doesn't make my model, my intuition valid and their intuition invalid. It just means that we have a difference, and if you recognize that, oftentimes it's easier to communicate, check your worst impulses, and maybe come to some reasonable solution that allows you to avoid killing everybody.
Okay, but what if you empathize with them, and what they are consumed with is like resentment and vengeance and these sorts of like, possessions. These like sort of like
that helps you in a practical sense, but I'm just saying, like, from a self-awareness perspective, and from just being able to say, oh, hey, I understand why that person might feel this way. That's a tool that I like having in my tool belt.
I don't want to denigrate your book selections at all. I mostly just want to express that, like, I feel like a lot of the mistakes we've made in like various forms of like duty and idealism is in assuming that others are like-minded in their pursuit. Like, we could be looking at these mobs of just like beyond reform, belligerents. I don't know. It looks that way sometimes.
Yeah. There's definitely irreconcilable differences between people.
And I see it myself, honestly. If I had to be honest, like there are times, and I'm proud of it, but I get consumed by emotions that are not positive, and I'm beyond. You're not going to reason with me like that. Not that I should be that way, but I think that all of us are like that at times, and I think even increasingly so. Like in 2020, you weren't talking to me in 2020 because it was just nothing but piss and anger, and I just was consumed with like ruminating thoughts of like what we have to do about this. And thankfully, nothing happened. But like I can imagine others are in similar configurations at many times, and like you want to come to them with like what's fair, and like it's not time for what's fair. It's not about that anymore. These are people who are stuck between a rock and a hard place. So like in that vein, that's how I would justify some of the more esoteric stuff that I've been reading. Probably, what do you do when that's your environment? And again, I don't want it to be like these other books are perfectly commendable, but you have to find a pool of people where they're like useful with too. So that's the rub. It's a little harder to do.
This whole explanation, Chris, reminds me of your episode with Saifedean, where you basically pushed him, and he was speaking very ideologically, very textbook libertarian arguments, and you're pointing out to him that reality does not necessarily reflect what he believes in. And you basically push him to the point that he insulted you, and that was the end of the episode. I thought it was a masterclass in debate.
Thank you.
I wish we had more of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't know. I look at the, I look at some of these episodes a little differently. That was a time for antagonism, and I enjoy watching that kind of stuff with others too. But I don't know that we have those opportunities as much anymore. Like I would assume doesn't do interviews that aren't like part of his like already approved circle at this point. I don't know.
No, right now he has his own platform and he doesn't do interviews outside of it. He's like, why would I boost somebody else's platform because I'm so big, people want to join my show instead.
Okay, so there you go.
Anyway, you have some comments from BTC Moon Guy, who says he was a big fan of Bitcoin Uncensored and he's grateful for this chat. And there's also iCross007 or 007. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. He says, always excellent. Thank you. There's also Pete Rizzo on Twitter. And he says, is this Christmas?
Oh.
Well, I told him that this is half Christmas because it's the 25th of June. So it's 6 months away from Christmas. So it's almost Christmas. Theo Goodman. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was asked to write a piece by CoinDesk on multiple occasions, and in the recent years, and I like writing, so like I took at least one of those opportunities to write something, and then they rejected it, and it seemingly wasn't a unappreciated piece. It was just too tangential to the focus of Coin Post Bitcoin, whatever, periodical, and yes, and I don't know where that was going, but I wasn't sure if Pete was part of that decision or not. If he was, I wouldn't blame him if he rejected the piece. But I was doing more creative writing than anything else, and it was crypto themed. But they didn't want to. I think the words to me that they didn't want to be a creative writing outlet. I get that. I get that. But that's what I was offering.
I had Pete Rizzo on the show about a month ago, and he spoke very highly of you and said that you're always ahead of your time. And at the peak of your rage quit moment, you basically called Bitcoiners communists. And I don't think you're too far off with that comment.
Yeah, no, that's what's going to happen. I maintain a lot of these Bitcoiners will become communists. I fully see that. If they're not already. We can get into why. Well, that was very nice of him to say. So thank you, Pete.
Theo Goodman. Hi, Theo. He says, is the current Bitcoin maximalism an affinity scam?
It's a great question. Hey, Theo. Yeah, probably is. Yeah. I mean, what happens when like the group? I don't know. This is like such a problem, but like this is like the return to the irony when like the out group becomes like the in group, and now like you can appear prestigious by like offering concessions to the in group that prides itself on being an out. It just gets complicated. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. It is probably an affinity scam. Like, Richard Hart is a great example of that. Richard Hart basically did that. You know what? That's, I think, what I would say. Richard Hart probably, that was like his core, like innovative, like advancement. And not the only one, but that was like at the center of it. Is that he was going to be the affinity scam for the people who are resistant to affinity scams, I guess.
Hey, gentlemen, I got to drop. But Chris, it's fantastic to see you again.
Wayne,
it's
great to see you. I apologize for not seeing you more. I'm not the best friend. I've just been like a hermit. I will come out of hiding at some point maybe, and I'll have something to tell us. But until then, I don't know. I'm a very boring person these days.
Yeah. Well, if you make it back to the States, we'll definitely, get together. I'd love to have you in Austin. And Vlad, thank you for setting us up. I really appreciate it. Nice trip down there. All right. Take care, gentlemen.
Bye, Wayne. Yeah. It's the way it was supposed to be in the beginning, but I got sidetracked and I thought it was too nice of an opportunity to not do this because these people are very passionate about expressing their super fandom for Bitcoin Uncensored, and they appreciate your work and they're fans of yours. And I said to myself, I shouldn't be selfish. I should allow them to get this. Because if I was selfish, I would just tell them, oh, you can ask them questions. I could even charge them for it and be like, oh, you get priority with your question if you pay me $100. But I didn't do it. I said, okay, you guys can come in. There is Finite Maz on Twitter, and he wants to know if Ethereum is still a fraud that proved its smart contracts are at the court of some Russian kid. Honestly, I don't think so. I do understand the arguments for it being a scam, but I think I'm more nuanced in this regard because I think they paid some very genuine and well-intentioned researchers, and they did create some stuff that's rather useful. They did experiment with layer 2s, they did push the research and development of zero-knowledge proofs, so it's hard for me to hate them because I realize that, for example, Paul right now with his drive chains is taking the Ethereum model, just copying it and putting it on something that makes more sense.
Give you where you walk into a school, and like this just get me in trouble all the time. And everybody is just trying to get to the end of the day, or just like checking a box. And so there's going to be like some like polite thing that you say that discloses to everybody you're a quote unquote team player, and then things move on. But it's a lie. It's just an outright lie. And Ethereum feels like that. Ethereum seems to me to be the exact same thing. You'll get kicked out of the room unless you affirm some like basic things. Then once you affirm those basic things, you will be held in like esteem. And there's so many scams out there now. It's like it's definitely a meaningless word. Just kind of got weird. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, Chris.
Look, if you're making money on Ethereum, I think it's
when
great.
Wayne left, I accidentally muted you on the
Oh
stream.
no!
So you have to
Oh, no, I'm
summarize your
talking to
point about
myself.
Ethereum once again.
Okay, I don't know. Yes, Ethereum is a scam. It looks otherwise. It appears to be like a .com replay, but it is merely an appearance. The matter is not there. It's a simulacrum. That being said, almost everything is turning into a scam anyways, so who cares? Yes, it's a scam, and who cares? Maybe that's the way to answer it.
There's the Pukap psychopathic Bitcoin, whatever this is. He says, admit it, we should have all bought the shit coins. Logic, reason, and morality is for peasants.
Well, you say that now. So yes, now it's for peasants. Yes. But there will become a day, if history bears out, where that is not the case. So like there's a time window. Like we are selling our future for the present is what's going on. And so while you're announcing that it's for the peasants, and I can see it, I probably even agree with that. That isn't ultimately what's going to happen. Ultimately, what's probably going to happen is that the whole thing gets called off and a bunch of people are left holding the bag, unfortunately. Or if it doesn't, that's also fine. But then what's going to probably happen is like just what happened in Albania, which is also not really great. That being said, like from a financial perspective, indexing did great. Like what Shrimpy does, I think is a fantastic product. None of you are going to like talk about it. But that's really, in my estimation, probably your best bet, or was. And last I checked, was a better performer than Bitcoin, but only as a strategy, for reasons that are kind of obvious.
Okay. There's also Canex who says, tell him Chris DeRose's rabbit wants to know why the actual fuck he didn't choose a truly controversial podcast instead of the sorry-ass excuse you produce. Gotta be someone with a brain to make it interesting. You suck.
I like him. I really didn't want to be on any podcast. Honestly, Vlad, you called me at a good time. I'm telling you, like before this started, I told Vlad, like my answer is just no to everything. I get semi-regular invitations. I'm very appreciative that people think of me, and I am uninterested. This is all cost for me. Like not even in terms of time, but also just like reputationally and otherwise. Like all I can do is go down, best I can tell. I'm not gonna like go on a show and like walk away from here and have like somebody in my life tell me they watched this and they were really happy and impressed, and that doesn't happen anymore for a lot of reasons, mostly because of the people I hang out with. And likewise, like there's like some memory that many of you guys have of me, and for better or worse, that's there. And anything that I add to it's probably not going to be like better. So like it's all negative. But to your credit, Vlad, you were persistent, and I like you because you're a nice person, and I can tell you're a positive, intent-minded person. So yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for like greater exposure. In fact, I'm not even sure that I feel like I did the right thing here, but like that's okay. Also, like I can go fuck off, and I like them.
Also, I've been chasing you for months, if not longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Than a year.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. The lesson I think is to be persistent. Thank you. You think about Junset. It's interesting that Junset's circle is different than my circle. I haven't talked to him like since the end of the show. Like there's very little dialogue between us, and I'm fine with that. Like I'm okay with that. But it's interesting to see that the kind of places, I haven't even watched any of his interviews, but people send me stuff, and I've just kind of like noticed, like I'm pretty sure that the people invite me on their shows, and then there's people like you who, for whatever reason, didn't get along with Junset and had me on their show. So it's just funny to me to watch. That's just odd. I don't know what that says. It's kind of funny.
It's definitely strange, if you ask me. So the Pukap psychopathic Bitcoiner wants to know, what the fuck happened to black market money? Now I got presidents pumping my bags.
Great question. I monitor the Darknet markets have some interesting developments. I don't know how much I want to get into, but like the HR departments are very interesting. That's a whole new thing that I can tell in the Darknet. And they're not, from what I can tell, they're not using crypto as much. And when they do use crypto, Monero and Bitcoin are the two that I've seen, and Ethereum. I've seen Ethereum. But Monero, I think, is interesting given the size of the market cap. And I believe that there are some traditional payment processors that are being used now, like just regular dollars going through some sort of intermediary. So I don't know what's up with that. But I don't think the Darknet markets are as full-on crypto as they were.
There's early NFT.bit who says, I have wondered if Chris ever felt somewhat responsible for having given Richard Hart the foothold he needed to launch his series of scams. Richard was an excellent guest on the show, so no blame should be assigned, but I imagine it's gotta hurt to see what became of it all.
It's a great question. At the time, I definitely felt responsible, and I felt responsible for a few reasons. And I tried to air his dirty laundry as a kind of apology. So now I don't feel responsible anymore because enough time has gone past and he's succeeded, and then some on his own. So, yeah.
Honestly, we did speak about Richard Hart earlier, and I didn't get into this point because the other guys had something to add, and I feel strange when I monopolize the conversation. But if I'm not mistaken, he is part of a cult which is trying to create eternal life or something like that. They regard aging as a disease, and they're trying to get as much money to fund development so that they can live forever. And they think that if they are able to raise a lot of money and donate to research, they're gonna be part of this privileged club that's going to live forever. I'm pretty sure that Vitalik is also part of that club. But where I'm heading with this is that I think all of this scam and all of the fact that he was buying material things was just part of perpetuating his scam and attracting the kind of audience that he already had, which was very greedy and was very basic in its ways of relating to wealth. And he was doing all of this meta scammer play while actually, I guess he had different reasons. I'm pretty sure that he donated a lot of money to that cause. And I'm pretty sure that he believes he's gonna live forever. He's crazy enough to believe in this.
I know that he's part of that cult. It is a cult. I've known others in that cult. That cult never interested me. I don't know why. Because some people are just like moths to a flame. And then I was just like, I don't get it. Like, A, I don't want to live forever. B, you're not going to be successful. That was like my impression. So I don't know. If he gave some money to charity of any kind, like that's encouraging. He doesn't. I don't know. That would be nice to think of because my diagnosis of him, he just spent everything on his own like personal material gain, and he's very, transparent about those expenses. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe some money went to this nonprofit and they were actually a nonprofit and something good came out of it. I don't know. Sort of a fake, but they're probably a fake nonprofit and you just got friendship out of them. I don't know. Who knows?
M.A. Caselli says, do you still believe in the efficient market hypothesis? Follow-up question, if yes, explain how it holds true in the case of Luna. Luna, if you're not aware, was the Ponzi scheme that crashed in the previous market cycle.
Okay. So yeah, EMH, I'm in. Like all I really do, we were talking before the show, like the only investments I really have right now are just like put money in S&P 500. I don't know what else. I buy some physical gold. I still have crypto. I got everything. There's nothing that really speaks to me. Like I'm not buying real estate either. That being said, one thing about the EMH that I don't know that we harped on enough, and we probably should have, is that EMH is within the boundaries of your regulations. So if your regulation environment is retarded, like you've got to have like transgender midgets, as like 50% of your board membership, the market will do that, and it will efficiently produce whatever your product is, given that encumbrance that the market has been forced to endure. So I think that because of those sort of perverse political and regulatory environments, we get what appear to be very inefficient results. But I would ascribe the inefficiency to the regulatory borders and not to the investment paradigm itself. As far as Luna goes, I don't know all the details. Knowing very little about it, all I can tell you is that it may be that the market depth was very shallow. There was very little liquidity. I don't know if that's true though. That would be my like go-to guess, just given the fact that it's Luna, and they probably made a lot of like noise, and they probably had a lot of fake wash trade type stuff going on, if I had to guess. And I don't doubt there was a lot of money involved also, but like it may just not be amongst many people. It could have been a very, like early Bitcoin was only like Roger Ver had all like the Bitcoin and a handful of other people, and your market was like, like 1%, less than 1%, like 100 people owned 99% of the inventory, and maybe that's what happened with Luna. I don't know. That's just a guess. I have no idea though. Sorry, so I can't help you on that one.
Wayne, before he joined the interview, he put this question out there, and I guess it's a good one, and I should read it, even though he had his time to ask stuff. He wants to know, what's life like after Bitcoin?
Yeah, great question. So for myself and my friends that I've seen, a lot of people lived a fast life, like Richard Hart kind of guys, and many of them died. Not all of them, but like a non-trivial amount. Like I had a number of friends in the space that they died. They just died of their excesses and their indulgences. That was one unfortunate after Bitcoin experience for a lot of people. A lot, but like more than a few. In myself, I have found a lot of change. You all don't know me now the way that most people know me, and on the one hand, I'm exactly the same. On the other hand, I'm completely different. One way in which I'm completely different, I touched on this here, is like I don't care about money that much anymore. Like I do in the sense that like I've written an accounting package, I manage my investments, I spend it, like that is my job basically, is to manage my money. But I don't in the sense that I no longer find the question of what is money as interesting as I once did. That being said, and then on top, and as a companion, like I've got a friend who just bought like a new Porsche, and like it's a very nice Porsche, it's some fancy model, and I was very polite with him about it, and it's a nice car, like no doubt. But then I was like asking myself, I was just performing the act of kindness. I couldn't care less about it for a few reasons, not least of which is just I'm not into that kind of stuff anymore, and I don't like possessions, and I've kind of found myself like having, I guess, and like just the sort of like the process of consumption and materialism in general. Like, this is me. There's been a lot of boredom. Like, there's a time when I was just wandering beaches, like around Latin America. I still kind of do that, actually. Things changed, but just people watching, reading a lot. I get sucked into books. Um, I, I found myself like a bit of an alien. Frankly, I feel like an alien in many ways. Like, not in a bad way. Like, just like the sort of like provincial concerns are no longer part of my life, and so that is not a situation most people have. And I I find another thing I've seen in myself. This is like, I'm so boring now. Um, I find that I'm like a more content person by like not indulging, by like trying to remove the indulgences in various forms. So like my eating is like very bland. I stay away from anything that's rich. I try not to eat food that's good. It's very. I'm not making a case here. I don't know what this is. You asked. This is the answer. Um, I don't like eating at like fancy restaurants. I don't like eating food that tastes good. In fact, I have a theory that the reason most people are fat is because they enjoy eating. So I try not to enjoy eating, and I'm happier that way. I believe. But these are all like fairly like significant changes. Like, not that I was ever like a big eater or something. I just found that like, okay, I think in general, the aesthetics are, I no longer have faith in the aesthetics. That would be the summary. That's what I'm trying to say. I've lost my faith in the aesthetics. I don't believe in them anymore. And that causes a lot of problems for me in my life that are fine problems, but that alienate me with the people around me. So I would define aesthetics as like the feelings of the immediate, so not just the way that things appear, but in how they make you feel. And I distrust those feelings, and I try not to have them. I don't know what to tell you. That's what happened to me.
This is the Eastern European in me speaking right now, but you sound like the wealthy Westerner who went to India for a month and then came back and can no longer relate.
Yeah. Fuck that guy. I don't like that guy. But yeah, I do sound like that guy.
You're a lot more educated and well-read than that guy, but at the same time, there are some similarities, and you have to admit it.
I see that. Yeah, I do.
Like rejecting materialism and saying that you're not happy eating good stuff. Like, you're not even taking good care of yourself.
Maybe. I mean, my body fat is low. I work out a lot. I don't know that I would say that I'm not taking care of myself. I think it's just not indulging in like the things that make me feel good. I've lost faith in that. Every time I do that, almost every time I should say, I end up like if you eat rich foods, if you eat processed foods, you're gonna get hungry. And that like metaphor exists for a lot of the things we do. Like the guy that bought the Porsche, he's gonna get hungry for another car, another year. Like, I'm not hungry for a Porsche now. I don't want to be. And what's gonna happen to him is he's gonna buy his Porsche and he's gonna want like a super Porsche by this time next year. Like, he'll have like satiated the hunger, only to have it come back and then some. So that's probably some like hippie Indian idea, but it's evident. Like, you can just see it in yourself, to being honest. Like most of you probably.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. You reject the Porsche, but what about the Supra? Are you aware of the Supra cycle? I think I sent you the image.
I don't think. I know the Toyota Supra, which had its like re-release. Is it related to that Supra, or is it something different?
It's basically a pun, because there was this super cycle, which was this meme, which was propagated like 4 years ago, and they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna go up and never go down." That was the thesis of this. I think I sent it to you by email. Let me put it on the screen.
Yeah, if you showed it to me, I might see it.
So basically, I created my own price thesis, which says in the super cycle, what I did was to draw a line on the chart, I just drew a line.
I think I did see this.
And it played out so much better than anything else that's mathematical and financial and tries to justify itself with some very esoteric science. I just drew a line and it turned out to be more accurate. And the thesis of this is that you're gonna wait until you get to a certain price point where you're comfortable, and then you buy a Toyota Supra because it's the super cycle, and then you get a girlfriend. And that's the whole idea of it. It's aspirational. It's not about sitting on your ass in your mom's basement and saying, I'm going to hold on to this because it's generational wealth. I'm going to be the next George Soros or whatever. It's just about enjoying life. It's just about getting a girlfriend. Just do something with your life. Have a nice car, get a girlfriend, enjoy life. You know, it's not necessarily hedonistic. It's just aspirational and inspirational. It's just trying to do something that's so basic yet so alienated from your existence.
Well, I don't want to criticize anybody. If that's what they do, go for it. I don't know. I thought it myself that some of these things leave us wanting.
So you think you're gonna want another girlfriend or another Supra?
I don't want to. I don't know. I was like, I don't want to. I don't really want. All I want is one time, and all I seem to do at the time is like work out and read. Because really, I'm very unimpressive. Like just I'm like a house cat almost. Like it's like a traveling house cat. Like there's really nothing that exciting that I do anymore. I've seen on some of these like digital nomad groups, like there's a kind of burnout from like digital nomadism that sounds like what I've got. Like when I was younger, I would like go and do more things, like go check out the rainforest maybe, or like I don't know, do the whitewater rafting or these. Now I just kind of show up and walk around and people watch. I want to have kids. Like I would like to have kids. I was gonna buy some and do like the gestational surrogacy.
What do you mean buy some?
Yeah, you could do that. You go to Florida. There's a store. They collect your juice in a cup, and then you find it like their profiles. And I've looked into this like a lot. You find like a woman who will donate her egg, and they'll put the egg in like a immigrant, usually like a Mexican immigrant, and then 9 months later, it pops out of her, and you get the baby, and you're all good. So I may still do that. I don't know, but I was feel guilty about it. I thought about it a lot. Like,
isn't that called having a surrogate mother?
Yeah. I mean,
but that's not buying kids. It's just inseminating someone that you pay without actual sex, which is boring. You need a Supra, Chris, and then a girlfriend.
Okay, I can get a Supra. I could buy one today if I really wanted to. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there's someone listening right now who would buy you a Supra if they had the chance.
Give it a charity. I don't need you to buy me no car. I don't deserve that. But thank you, whoever that person was.
Anyway, I have more questions in the chat. There's Johan Mullet. Johan, I'm not sure. He says, what does Chris think about the future of hygienic models for Bitcoin? How does he feel about layer 2 hygiene? Is hygiene scalable?
I think so unironically, I think hygiene is an excellent trope, if not a thesis. Anytime you're dealing with like if you're going to start your own cult or like the religious group, like any matter of purity or hygiene is going to help you appeal to the senses that you're going to need to appeal to in order to attract the types of zeal that you want. So yeah, I think hygiene is an excellent moniker, and I think that's a positive direction. I encourage it.
Okay.
As I'm thinking here, to revisit like some of my attitudes too on like the materialism, as I travel to you see, like I don't want to be this guy. I don't want to harp on it too much, but you see poverty a little differently, and I think having ventured outside the tourist areas, it made it harder for me to enjoy a lot of the luxuries. Also.
But I can relate to that. For me, growing up in Romania and still living here means that I deal with poor people every day. So everything that's, for example, people tell me, oh, Vlad, you should move to Dubai. And I'm like, why? Why would I want to be in that shallow society where everyone measures their success according to how much money they make, and they have this fake luxury where that's all they have. They don't have anything else. They don't have a culture. They can't relate to each other in other ways except for the money that they're making. For me, that's boring. There's nothing to it. Oh, you don't get taxed? Okay, fine.
If I were to buy like a Supra today, I'm going to think immediately of a handful of places in Colombia where the kids are not given what they need. And then I'm going to feel immensely guilty about having spent money on an indulgence of that kind. And I'm not proud. I'm not like not proud of that. I'm not especially not proud to be like telling others that. But you ask about life post Bitcoin, like these are the types of things that are haunting at times. Just kind of happened.
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess you're trying to deny the privilege of having had access to better education and infrastructure and information at a point in your life. And that's what led you to buy Bitcoin.
I can justify my success in many, many ways. However, I'm telling you that I look at the kids in my head and they don't go away. Just saying. Like, I'm not saying, I don't want it to be like...
Maybe you should adopt them, Chris.
I think about those types of things. I do. I think about that. And my mother tells me to do that. And I don't want to do that. And I don't feel good about that.
You want to have your own.
I have a lot of guilt. I don't know what to say. I am like consumed with guilt often. Not for anything related to Bitcoin Uncensored. Just like reading and feeling like a monster. Like that is like maybe not happy subject matter because you're all no different, you fuckers. But you know, that's what happens. You spend a lot of time reading, you're gonna change. That's what happens.
No, but my point is that if you grew up in one of these places that you think right now deserve help and you feel sorry for them, you would not pass on the opportunity to get a free Supra. That's what I'm saying. Because those people never had the opportunity and you have it. And you're in a position where you can deny this privilege, but they would never say no to it. So you're trying to relate to them, but at the same time, you're acting in ways that they would never act.
If I got a free Supra out of this, someone tomorrow showed up with one, I would feel compelled to sell it and give it to charity. That's probably what would happen. I would drive it around for like a day or two, take some pictures.
Send me the pictures.
Cool cars. They're very cool cars. Okay.
There's David Freeman. Or Freeman, I'm not sure. In the chat, he says, what does he think of the current state of Bitcoin development generally and also Bitcoin core development specifically? This is broad.
Oh, no, I mean, here's the thing. I felt this way for a while. I've communicated this as much. We have a lot of impossible goals in the development. And as a result, it seems to me that we have effectively created a governance model that can't call itself a governance model, that is 100% a matter of human agency, and which is opaque to us as users. As such, I resent a lot of the process. I think there would be far better, I hate that word, but far more egalitarian ways of achieving the same results. And it's a disappointment to me that we don't. In the matter of competency, I think we have a lot of very competent people, certainly technically. And I think the goals are laudable. However, I think that the means by which we make decisions is frustrating at the very least, but also probably not sustainable. The reason it's not sustainable is because the entirety of the matter is predicated on the ticker symbol, which we can get into, but like the unspoken authority over the ticker, BTC, is the one who owns Bitcoin. Like that's an abstraction and a bit hyperbolic, but that's kind of what we've ended up with. And it's a lot of opacity between that ticker symbol and how things get done. You may not believe that, but we can talk about it if you want.
Well, I came to this conclusion that right now development is no longer ideological in any way, or pragmatic, or practical, or relying on technological merits. It's all about to which extent is this going to upset the guys who are pumping our bags. And I think you are very much ahead of your time with the morality of number go up. You are presenting this idea that the only morality in this space is whether or not it makes the number go up. I think we degenerated to that point.
Yeah. Well, it's not just a Bitcoin phenomenon. In general, all of our leaders, as best I can tell, in all of like the Western space, um, believe what they believe as a matter of avoiding outrage or in response to outrage. And so some of that is like technical in the sense that like the internet created these incentives. Some of that is our own like bankruptcy as a culture. I the whole morality thing kind of snuck up on me because I made it very clear to everybody at multiple times during the show. I'm not a moral person. I don't believe in morals, etc. And then I got really bitten by that over time, to the credit of everybody who told me as much at that time. I don't know. I don't want to call their names out, but they were 100% correct, and all of us probably shared a lot of that. Like a lot of us came in like the person who said earlier, like peasants, the ones who are like in it for any cause are a peasant. Like that is the mentality that will get you burned ultimately, not in the short term, but ultimately. And so, well, seems to fit. Yeah, but with the Bitcoin development, unfortunately, I think all Bitcoiners are a combination of stupid or intentionally lying, and are misrepresenting what it is that the space is about, in part because of how the development's done, and that's sad. Roger Ver was knocking on that door and aware of that problem very fully at an early time, and I think a lot of the reason people hate him is because he disclosed these ideas.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And also, I know back in 2018, you were talking a lot about Blockstream's influence in the space, and also came to the conclusion that the company, which I perceived as being this Bitcoin development company that was hiring developers to build stuff, is actually a political company that's meant to exert influence. They're pushing an agenda to a greater extent than they're actually developing stuff. None of the stuff that they actually built is successful. It's not a profitable company by any metric. Liquid never went anywhere. Their Lightning Network implementation has always been a niche project that nobody really took seriously for building stuff. They tried mining, they tried their satellite business, they're into hardware wallets, they're selling hats. But I think selling hats is actually something that carries a stronger political message, and something that is distributed at conferences or whatever, and actually keeps people in check. And whenever Adam Back joins a debate on Twitter, he's like the guy who presents the ultimate argument. Nobody's going to want to disagree with him, and that's the end of it. What's interesting is that on one hand, you have the CEO of Blockstream, Adam Back, encouraging stuff, and he goes on conference stages saying, maybe that increasing the block size is something that we're going to do ultimately as the wounds of the Civil War are going to heal. And maybe that Polestor's drive chains were a greater priority than Taproot, which was something that was built by people from his company. But his views as the CEO are more like the views of the ambassador of Bitcoin or something, saying everything that's nice, promoting every product, saying that it's great. But then you have to deal with the actual people of Blockstream who are discouraging stuff from happening. And they have this very... So I got kicked out, it feels, in some ways, and I know that the metaphors relating to the Matrix are stereotypical, but it's like that scene when Neo gets rejected by the Matrix and he wakes up and realizes that everyone is in a pod, It was very strange because I saw myself spending years of my life trying to please some people and trying to not step out of line. And then I did one interview and they were so angry at me and so mad that they started spreading rumors about me, getting paid by Roger for the interview, joining Bitcoin Cash and stuff like that. And of course, the Bitcoin Cash people were in my DMs all the time saying, hey, join us. Look, I can send you free Bitcoin. I can do this. What I actually did was I posted a tweet publicly and I said, okay, I'll accept Bitcoin Cash. This is my address. You can send me your funds here. I got them to send me about $1,000 of BCH, but that was actually the address of Ross Ulbricht. So basically, I raised funds without their knowledge for a good cause, and I showed to people, I also try to make it more nihilistic in my discourse and say, ultimately it's just software. Why are we so offended about running software on our computers and our phones when the goal is actually to stay free, or to be cypherpunk, whatever that means? And they don't like it. It doesn't pump their bags. They like narratives.
That's not their goal. They like the narratives that they perceive as being a way to pump their bags. I mean, you see it. I'm not going to add to that. You get it. Unfortunately, I think I don't want. I love that you're doing what you're doing, but unfortunately, I think what you're going to find is that the size of your audience is going to suffer as a result of your what's the, I mean, seeking truth basically is going to reduce the size of your audience, unfortunately.
No, but that's very good. So I guess in
I
your
think so
era,
too,
this was
as
detrimental.
long as you know it. Yeah.
In your era, maybe that this was suicide to pursue this path. But I came to the conclusion that when you compare shows and podcasts, it's like looking at restaurants. And you're going to have the show that's like McDonald's and gives everyone what they want and everyone seems happy, but it's ultimately junk. And then you're going to have this fine dining restaurant that takes subjects and really puts customers, takes them for a journey and makes them experience something different every time. And there's a lot of value in that. Of course, McDonald's can have 10,000 customers in a day and deliver everything to everyone's home because they like that. But you're going to have this restaurant which maybe has 10 people who are eating there every day. But after they eat there, their perception of what food is going to get changed. And this is also the way in which I pitch my podcast to sponsors. I tell them it's not about how many people listen. It's about who's listening and who's sending me feedback about it. And I tell them, the CEO of this company is listening. There's David Bailey, who's in my DMs telling me I did a good job sometimes. It's incredible. So I'm appealing to this audience of people who actually can make a change and make a difference. Because ultimately, if you look at any revolution in the history, and right now I'm just rubbing my shoulders or stroking my ego or whatever, but in the history of mankind, you look at the French Revolution, American Revolution, 1848 revolutions in Europe, anything. It was not something that came from the masses. The masses were very much complacent and in line with the system. It was just a bunch of elites that got themselves educated on the means to start this revolution. And it was a handful of people in a room that they got together. They wrote some pamphlets and some declarations, and then they pursued them. So it was never about the masses. It's all about the people who are smart enough, educated enough, and motivated enough to make the change. And I believe that this show is contributing to a very small extent, but significant yet, to people learning some new stuff and escaping that mindset of a cult and thinking of different ways in which they can contribute to something which is much greater than a piece of software.
That sounds great. It's a beautiful attitude. Please keep it. I would only add to that we had somebody earlier in the channel call you some bad name. I don't know. You're going to be reviled if you continue with this beautiful attitude, and you should continue.
But I enjoy it. I read that message specifically.
That's what I was going to say.
That guy is in my mentions all the time, and he insults me, and he calls me names. He calls me a gypsy or whatever, which he knows is an insult for Romanians because whatever. It's a long history. Yeah. He tries to get my attention, but I don't give it to him. And I know that there are a lot of people like that. Yeah. Why would I waste my time? I know what they're trying to do, okay? I gave him this. I read his message on the show.
Yes. That's his function. That's the function that he serves in the system, is to be a schmuck to anybody who is saying something that he perceives as being detrimental to, the group interest in number crop. I mean, that's what they're there for.
But it's much nastier. I had Giacomo Zucco. I'm not sure how much you're aware of his work.
Yeah. I mean, not lately, but over time in the past, certainly.
He bullied me to the extent that he created a page called Vlad's Dog and claimed that I fucked my own dog. And that was my dog tweeting. And I thought on one hand it's so stupid. On the other hand, it reached to some people, and some people whom I considered my friends and whom I've been trying to please followed that page and were making fun of the memes. And I was thinking, this is how far they can go, because they have nothing on me, really. They have nothing to say about me. Unlike Giacomo, I didn't take money from shitcoin investors or whatever to start projects.
This is validating. He could have done that to anybody, but he chose the number one problem to address, which in his mind was you. So you went to the top. I got to say, one of the reasons why I got out of the space is that's just like, I did that to people. People did that to me. Eventually, I said to myself, you know what? Why am I spending my time doing this? Like, there's a few other points to it, but like, just make sure you're getting enough out of this process to where that those negatives aren't, detracting, and they're truly validating. Like, that's the other side of it. But here's the thing. What do you do when you're surrounded by like morons? Like there may be a point where you look around the room and you're like, you know what? These are like sludge monsters. Every single one of them, or like 90% of them. And then now what do you do? And then like, I don't have a solution to that problem, but you may find that that's what you're up against at some point. You may already be there.
No. I mean, my point right now is that I'm very much aware that this is happening and this is what's going to happen to me. They have nothing to say, so they're gonna make up, just like they make these sexual scandals or whatever. They're gonna find something and they're going to present these stories. What they said about me that I took money from Roger for that interview was insane. At one point I even said, I can actually prove to you. I can get Roger's statement. I can show my... I don't want to do that, but I can actually show my Bitcoin wallets or bank statements or whatever. I never received anything from that guy. There was no communication about payment. I've been chasing him for like 6 months to get an interview. And then he finally accepted. And when he accepted, it got big. And it's beyond my control which interview gets big. For some reason, this one only has 600 views on live stream right now. But the one with Roger had like 2,000 or 3,000 while we were talking.
People love to hate him, probably. And then you didn't give him that pleasure. Unfortunately, the bigger cost in all of this is that you end up operating in a bad faith environment. Like the net effect on this entire space is that the waters become polluted by everyone's correct assumptions that truth telling is not going to be in their benefit, which is one of the reasons why we had a lot of problems, like we talked about in the space, where you have people like the elites who say the right thing that people want to hear because they're swimming in bad faith water. So they may know that what they're saying is a lie, but they also know that if they don't say the lie, the mic would be pulled. So that's kind of what you're looking at in a lot of ways in the space is the result of that force that creates bad faith incentives for everybody, fortunately.
Sometimes I'm super
Everybody's
jealous.
watching this. Why are you jealous?
Go ahead, and then I'm gonna tell you.
No, everybody who's watching this, who's like assuming, like I'm gonna say like 90% of you are probably like decent people, and you're not gonna put the time into, spending all day on Twitter. Totally reasonable. But because of that action, the other 10% is gonna tell you guys what you do with your time. Ultimately, over time, this is how the critical mass is often only 10%, because all you need is like a certain number of people to be active. Oftentimes, the easiest way to get those people is through like stoking the craziest conspiracies and nonsense and lies. And then the tyranny of that 10% ends up controlling the other 90%. So for everybody watching this, that's what, like, just so you know, I'm not telling you should change. There's no reason you can even, but like you are effectively choosing that environment to live in, which if you're okay with it, you're okay with it. But that's that.
I'm done complaining, but I'm jealous sometimes when I think about you, because I realize that you are older and you were in the right place at the right time when this was happening. And I was just a stupid student from Romania who discovered Bitcoin and thought it was a bad idea. And I realized that you did everything before I ever could. And whatever I do is just a remix or a different presentation of the same material. And I feel jealous. But at the same time,
Well,
people tell me that I'm ahead of my time. So I don't know what to make of that.
I would thank you. That's a very flattering thing to say. What I would tell you is I was emulating somebody else. I don't know who, but I'm sure somebody. I could probably come up with examples here and there. There's an amalgamate of inspiration that ended up on my show. So I wasn't quite so original as to be like the progenitor of this format. But
you're part of the reason why that article about Bitcoin maximalism was written in 2015.
Yeah, that was a big part of that. And
you basically started a movement without even knowing that you were starting a movement.
It's life is like that, man. There's in other spheres. Sometimes you try so hard. So here's the thing. Like, sometimes you try so hard to do something, fail, and succeed at something completely different that you never even set out to like do. That has happened to me often in my life. That may happen to you. I would say do what you're doing and be cognizant of that. Understand that like your successes may come about in completely tangential ways from the podcast, though facilitated by the podcast, and your originality may poke out there. From my perspective too, like when I was doing Bitcoin, we had like Andreas Antonopoulos kind of got started a little bit around the same time I did, maybe even before. I don't think so, but maybe. We had Eric Voorhees. Like there were people that were preceding me, not in the format exactly, but in sort of Bitcoin advocacy and such. So I don't think that I was very different, really. Like you're going to add your own Romanian spice to this, and there may very well be somebody who comes after you who is giving you the same thing that you just told me. So it's a line. I will say like something that you're getting that the audience doesn't understand is like you're looking at your camera. Like right now, what they don't understand that you understand fully is that you're looking at a camera lens, and the near entirety of this experience that they're having is between you and like this stationary piece of plastic on your desk, and that alone is worth a lot of what you're doing because not many people understand that. And if you haven't figured that out yet, you will at some point. It'll click, and then you'll look at the TV completely differently when that happens. So that's something.
It is
There's
something.
people who don't like they will tell you that they know that the TV is like a production, but you watch them and it's like something they say, then that leaves their mind and they're 100% like seduced and captivated and have forgotten what they just said. And like they think that they're there with their friends hanging around the couch watching like, some I don't know, sports commentary or something like it's hard for me to go back to that. And it'll probably be for you as well, sooner or later. And that's worth a lot. That's worth an awful lot.
It's hard for me to take the news seriously because I see how Bitcoin news is created and how narratives are invented on the spot for the purpose of justifying why the price went up or why it went down.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to understand how something else is serious in its methodology. I don't think anything is scientific. They're just trying to find the reason why something happened. And usually they pick the low-hanging fruit,
Well, their goals are to sustain an audience, which is a little different than, again, the pursuit of truth. You're going to see a lot of issues in the Bitcoin space very differently just because of where you are right now. Like these people who knock you, call you names, etc., the reason they disagree with you is because they don't sit in the chair you're sitting in. They don't see the private conversations, the candid confessionals, the other side of the person off stage, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a big reason for why you see things the way you did.
I do remember, so I don't think it's nice that I reveal this conversation, which was private, but okay, I'm not gonna mention his name, but he was the guy who held the camera when you busted into Satoshi's Roundtable at the Mexican restaurant.
Okay.
So he was living in Florida at the time.
Who. Yeah, I know exactly who.
He was on my show a few times. He lived here in Romania for a few years. I'm giving too much information right now. But basically, he told me that he's very much aware that much of this is bullshit. and ask him, do you honestly agree with Saifedean? Because you guys were on a panel and you seem to agree with each other. And he said, I'm not going to knock on the Bitcoin standard. It's a powerful brand, and I think it aligns with the interests of me and my company. And I'm not going to disagree with that just because it's factually wrong, you know?
Right. Right.
And to me, it was so disappointing because I perceived the guy as someone who is also a truth seeker, and he also calls out some bullshit. But at the same time, I think for the purpose of staying in business and doing business with a bunch of guys, there are certain limits to his expression, at least in public. And that's disappointing because I joined this space. I come from a background in I can't talk anymore. Political science, right? So I did not want to pursue a job in political science because I knew exactly what this is about. And to me, it was disappointing. It felt like they lifted the veil, they let us understand how this works, and then we're supposed to be part of the machine. I did not want to be part of that. And I perceived Bitcoin as being a more honest space that's meritocratic, that is all about proof of work. You know, we like to say that a lot, proof of work, but it's not. And it's so disappointing when you get to the politics and how petty some people are. And it's not even about technical criticism. It's just someone commenting based on their personal interactions and trying to destroy their reputation. It sucks. It's like high school.
This is why I say that this is a simulacrum, and what you've described is consistent in my estimation with that diagnosis. This person would perform the act he needs to perform in order to make money and whatever external influences are that he has. And you will arrive in a room where every single person is also acting in this way. And there's no orchestrator per se, but there are incentives across the line for everybody to say the right thing. And then the question of what is right is its own conversation. But most of the time, we all know what the right thing is to say. Like, it's not that hard to figure out what the right thing is to say. And most people just cave and say it, as opposed to saying the true thing. And as a result, what you have are these large orchestrations of lies through and through that appear to be something it's not, because that's the performative goal. And this has been going on for a while, and it's a little sad. Although the blockchain technology really made that turn into a whole thing that's pretty unique, actually. So yeah, you may just ask yourself when you go into these conversations, what's the right thing to say, and what's the right thing, not in terms of your own personal ethics, but in terms of like what the crowd will decide is right. Like, that's the key, because you don't decide what's right, because there's only one of you. It's the crowd that decides what's right, and you'll know what the right thing is to say. And it's not, but that's not what you should say, in my estimation. You shouldn't say the right thing. You should say the true thing, for your own, just for your own development as a human being. Like, and yeah, that's a tough part of the space, man. I mean, these are themes in being canceled. Not everyone's going to understand what I'm saying, and maybe you don't either, but you might understand. And if you do, then these are profound realizations, unfortunately.
I do recall at one point someone called you a fake Socrates, and you added that to your Twitter bio. And I think they were so off, because you were never trying to be a Socrates. You're more of a Diogenes, or how do you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Diogenes is absolutely. I love Diogenes, 100%.
But this also proves that they have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, but it's post hoc. Like, the goal is to denigrate me. Like, that's the same thing with this other guy who called you, like a gypsy or whatever. Like, it was never the case that he came here to tell the truth. It was the case that he came here to get rid of you. And once that's the goal, effect precedes cause. That's the greater point. Cause does not precede effect. Meaning, the effect that he was seeking is your removal or my removal. And thus, he will arrive at a cause post hoc. So yeah, calling me Socrates was in service of the effect of removing me. It wasn't that he saw me and said I was Socrates. No one's going to say that. He said that because he felt that there was some end that he could benefit from the effect, effectively, which would then be a reason to conduct a cause thereafter that would, send me to hell or something, I guess. Like that's what you're dealing with a lot of these people. It's not hard to understand. And unfortunately, you're going to lose a lot of your faith in the language. Just all of us are, but you're closer to the front of the line, so you're going to lose it first. I don't know about Romanian. Like, I don't even know how much of a language that is. I know it's some kind of language. Forgive me if I don't know if it's like a kind of some other language.
No, it's fine. It's the closest language to Latin that there is right now.
Oh, cool. Oh, so there you go. That's promising. I like that.
You should come here, Chris. You're gonna have so much fun.
I've been pretty close to coming on a couple of occasions. One of these days, if I call it, I'll definitely let you know. But yeah, okay, I didn't know it was close to Latin. So you're sitting in a good spot with that. You may want to brush up on Latin over time if you feel the way that I feel, and I could just be crazy. But your faith in English will start to erode for reasons like this. What you'll find is that people aren't communicating to like convey truth. They're communicating for lots of reasons, most of which are not something that you're going to put your faith in.
Well, it depends on how you define English, because if you hear a German speaking English, he speaks in a very eloquent way with a rich vocabulary. But if you listen to the Kardashian speaking English, it's just noise. They're making sounds just to fill space. They're not saying anything.
You're not missing the point. Well, they're saying something clearly, but they're not saying anything meaningful. And then you can start asking a question: what is it that they're saying then? Like, what is this? Why is this speech so echoed and so amplified and so reverberated? And then when you answer that, you're going to say to yourself, like, why the hell do I want to participate in a system where that's the outcome that is deemed good? And then you can lose your faith. You can lose your faith in English at that point, I think. And Romanian may be the same way, and I might be just completely wrong on my hypothesis, but I think the dead languages won't have this problem. And certainly the ancient languages. But look for effect preceding cause. If you start finding effect preceding cause, you're going to know that you're dealing with bad faith and non-meaningful communication. Like, the meaning is not there. It's all post hoc. It's there to denigrate the things that are not beneficial to this person, and to promote the things that are beneficial. But that makes it advertising. It's no longer communication at that point. It's like this awful form of advertising. So then, like, you're gonna ask yourself, like, do I really want to spend my time around like nothing but nonstop billboards for crap, or do I want to spend my time maybe talking to somebody and not that? That's I didn't mean to come on here to pitch that sort of theme, but like that's the kind of stuff I struggle with a lot lately, and one of the reasons why. And I definitely don't want to discourage you from what you're doing, because what you're doing is great. But you're asking for my opinion on some of this stuff. That's a place that I found myself in.
On the topic of English, I can tell you exactly what I learned in school about English and how I perceive it right now. So the argument for learning English in school, because we had to choose between English and French, was that it has this use in computer science, which was a big deal in the 90s when I was in school. And also in business. They were saying if you learn English, you're going to be able to deal with a lot more people to do business. For French, the selling point was that if you know French, you're going to deal with much more educated people and more high class.
Yeah, actually.
But basically, the way in which
on the
French
downside,
works...
There'll be French, unfortunately.
French is very similar with Romanian in lots of ways. From grammar perspective, the fact that you have gender to describe everything. There's masculine and feminine nouns that you point out to. But English is a lot simpler in the sense that it's more neutral when you speak it. So it's not always precise in its descriptions. And also the hardest part about English is just learning the irregular verbs to know which form to use in which context. But once you get that, it's very simple. The words are very simple. The way in which you address people is very formulaic. It's not very expressive. You don't, for example, in French or Romanian, you have at least 3 ways of ending a letter or email or whatever. And in that one, you're going to express the tone of whatever you said above. It's with friendship, it's with love, it's with compassion, it's Just one word that gets swapped for another is going to reveal to you whether or not that person likes you. There's also one that is more polite, which means they don't like you. So there's a lot more nuance, and I think that all of this struggle with social justice in the US revolves around the limits of English. And I agree with you in the sense that English sucks.
Actually, a lot of that is that.
But people refer to stuff like history and they say, oh, it's his story, which means it's written by men. That word has origins in Greek, and they don't know that. Of course they don't know, because your education system sucks to a degree. I mean, you learn stuff that we don't, and we learn stuff that is not accessible very easily in the US, and most people are not curious to know. But I think it's by design. You know, it's a different society, and the priority in the US is just to preserve individual freedom and to reject collectivism. For the past 3 or 4 decades, it seems like socialism is becoming sexy for some reason.
I was going to say, yeah, that was clearly the case for many years. I don't know if I see that as much. That may be the difference between the two parties, although there's a lot of differences now, so it's definitely not just that. But that's a little sad to see.
That's also something that we don't really have here in Europe. I mean, there's always a convergence to left and right. It's an easy dichotomy to make, but we have lots of parties, and rarely do we have a party that gets more than 50% or whatever. So there's always this division of smaller groups, and they have to agree with each other, make coalitions, and I think it's more complex as a system. In the US and the UK, it's a lot more simple. But I think even the UK, they have third parties like the Green Party and the Social Liberal Party or whatever, which are not part of the classic Labour and conservative dichotomy. So yeah, I think in the US you're sort of fucked with this two-party system, which seems to work until it doesn't, because it polarizes people to the extent that they can't talk to each other or they can't relate to each other's struggles, which sucks.
I don't have a lot of faith in the politics, and I think the way we tell the stories is part of the problem. I'm very skeptical that these parties are even... They hire actors. It just seems like Biden's an actor, Trump's an actor, and what happens behind the scenes is completely opaque to me.
They have always been. That's what I'm trying to suggest right now.
No, okay, so then we're on the same page.
What
I agree.
Biden and Trump have done was to lift the veil on how the system actually works. Because before that, it was harder to realize what's actually happening. But right now, it's obvious. If you have a brain and you can think for yourself, you can understand that there are other people in charge other than the ones that you elect. Maybe it goes to the deep state theory, but it can also be just the fact that every democracy has this tyrannical bureaucracy inside of it that is supposed to be there, because if it isn't and you only have the elected officials, you're going to have a state of complete chaos.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want a democracy. I really don't. This is one of the ways that I've come around to Luke Dash Jr.'s side of things. I like monarchy. I'd like to go back to monarchy. I understand why people don't like it. I'm not crazy about it either. But I think that what we're doing now isn't going to work, and that's probably the less damaging.
But in the monarchy, you're still going to have factions, and you're going to have a royal family, and then you're going to have a bunch of noble families that are trying to ascend to the status of royal family. So you're going to have beheadings, betrayals, alliances. It's not like you're going to have a lineage that's going to continue for centuries. There's always this situation where they want to behead the king.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I don't know that it's going to be successful either, but at least we don't vote, which is the problem I have with voting is that it completely corrupts the solidarity amongst the people, and like what is America is like not evident to me anymore. What is blue is more evident, and what is red is more evident. What is America, not so evident. So if you didn't vote, I think you wouldn't have that problem. And we may have all of the same corruption or even worse, but I don't have to deal with the apologies and the excuses, which maybe that's just a selfish opinion, but I'm sick of the apologies and the excuses. So I think that's what I would like. At least I could say, like, yeah, it's a fucking monarchy. because we couldn't keep the democracy in line. And like that's fine. Like then that's the end of it, and we can go back to being friends. As we're supposed to now, where it's like, like there's some argument we have, this perennial argument I have to have with the next guy.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
Chris,
Maybe that's short-sighted.
maybe that for the sake of efficiency, you would prefer to have a monarch. But honestly, someone like you and me can only exist within a framework that allows you to have free speech and say whatever you want and be able to vote out or get rid of the guy who's in charge. Even if you don't participate, some people are going to do that for you. They're going to make some change. So honestly, I think I don't see myself going to... My girlfriend is from Iran, right? I don't see myself going to Iran for the simple purpose that I don't agree with the values of the regime. I believe it's a beautiful country. I believe the people are super nice. But at the same time, I don't see myself going there for the simple reason that I don't agree fundamentally with the idea of this government.
I do think that we're going to decentralize. I do think that, because people like you and I aren't going to eventually get, just not here with the program. Like, they're going to have to kill me. That will be a way that I die. That is very possible. I'm not living in like, there's a handful of governments I'm just not living in.
In a democracy, they don't really kill you in a liberal, I can't talk. So they don't really kill you in a liberal democracy. They do character assassination. They paint you as this crazy person, this guy who just talks to himself and reads crazy books and should never be listened to. And there's enough of a critical mass to believe in that and basically discredit anything that you might do in your future and cast you out. So that's the way in which it operates. But nobody's going to physically kill you. At least not where you are.
Here's where the words fail us in a lot of ways, because then we're pressed to ask, what is democracy? And one answer to what is democracy is North Korea. And I'm not even joking. If you look at the Constitution of North Korea, it is recognized, I believe, as one of the best models of a democratic government. Double check me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But last I looked into this, there's a beautiful constitution. And if we appeal to said documents, we would be like humoring the idea that this is like some kind of like democratic form of government. And I never knew what to do in some of these conversations, because like, was America ever a democracy then? Like, was it also a kind of in between? And we would probably agree that no, it probably wasn't ever like some kind of like pure democracy. It was like a representative democracy. And then like, it just a lot of it comes into the words and what these things mean, I guess. It's just a very frustrating place. I don't mean to be that way, but like, here's the thing. These systems are too big. Like, they're just, I think what happened with the internet is the same thing that happened with the printing press, which is that these incumbent leadership structures can no longer be believed. People won't like entertain the ideas anymore, and major reshufflings have to happen. And maybe what we need is like maybe we need 50 small democracies in the United States, or like 50, they say 49, or like 25-25 democracy, socialism, whatever. Like, but the whole United States thing may be too big a government to run now in the internet, and we need smaller groups. That may be it. I don't know.
But it's already a federation, so there's already some federal, what do you call it? There's some freedom that each state has, some autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, we're like on the same page. Like, it's a lot of these sweeping themes don't have very precise delineations. And I don't know, we'll see. Like I said, I think in the beginning of, or in the middle of this, like I think that we're going to see like increased fracturing in the states. I think the federal government will stay there, and the state governments will just render it redundant, like inch by inch over a long period of time. That's what I think is probably going to happen if we have an election in November.
But that's the beauty of democracies, honestly, because you have leverages and you can try to subvert the authority of an authority. And within the system, you're going to have competition. And in the end, it's going to be the one that is either more acknowledged by the people or the one that has more market traction.
I understand.
It was the same with the mafias in the US. And I guess the federal government was efficient at getting rid of mafias. But those mafias, and this term carries a very, offensive meaning, But all of these mafias were basically local governments of people who were organizing themselves for a purpose because the government had failed them. There were immigrants who came to the US by different means. I don't think they filed as... I can rant for an hour about the way in which I couldn't get a travel visa for Nashville next month, but I'm not going to go there. But
Sorry to hear it.
everyone told me
Everyone
that
likes Nashville. Internationally, I'm shocked by this, but people internationally all tell me they want to go to Nashville. I like Nashville.
I wasn't
It's a nice place.
rejected per se, but they told me I should come for an interview in December. And I was like, I have to go there next month. And they said, sorry, we are overbooked for interviews. And it
Don't
sucks
cross the
because
border, man.
that's what everyone told me. And that's the irony of the situation. Because I tried to do everything by the book and be honest. And basically, I had to report all of my family members, whether or not they have American citizenship or if I have any family that can host me, and if I want to stay in the US or I want to go back, and if I have any criminal records or if I ever engaged in slave trade, or a lot of crazy questions that you have to file on your immigration form. It's not even immigration, it's just 5 days that I
Self-reported, yeah.
have to
As
spend
if
in the
anybody
US.
would be honest, it was that kind of a crook.
Exactly. If you did that, why the hell are you even filing?
Yeah.
It's insane. But I had to do that. I had to completely dox my family members, and I had to tell these people from the embassy where I'm going to stay, who's gonna pay for my trip, who's the person I'm gonna be meeting in US, whether or not they have a criminal record, what's their home address. It's insane. So many requirements. And I've been told that it can also get to the point where I'm asked to have at least $5,000 in my bank account when I travel to prove that I can support myself. So it's really crazy, the amount of paperwork that's required for something that can be bypassed if you travel to Mexico and you cross the border just walking. I don't know. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying that it's possible. And people
will be punished commensurately. Yeah. And that's what you get.
I think this is when you realize that the system is rigged or corrupt, when you realize that breaking the rules is not just simple, but a more celebrated way than actually trying to do it by the book.
Yeah. Which has been going on for a while, but it's getting worse. It's getting more clearly, like a lot more clearly. Vlad, I apologize, but I got to get somewhere here pretty soon.
It's fine.
It's 5 o'clock my time, and I would love to talk to you for some more. I just didn't budget that much time.
It's
so
fine.
Start wrapping this up. Okay, good.
I'm so happy that we did this. I'm sorry. I apologize
to
the
people.
people.
Yeah, this is really nice. I'm enjoying it.
There were some people complaining about the audio. I'm sorry about that. I fixed it. It's all live television, I guess. Thanks, Chris, and come to Romania and buy a Supra.
I will let you know when I come to Romania. Supra you might be waiting on. All right. Later, bud. Thanks, Vlad, so much.
Can you say goodbye to the party people?
Party people, peace out.